All right. Is everybody ready?
Yes, now I have the Dr. Zayas song stuck in my head, so we better get going.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zeus, Dr. Zeus.
Oh, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, can I play the piano anymore? Of course you can. Well, I couldn't before.
Hi,
Awesome.
this is Ren.
This is Casey.
And this is Mark.
Woohoo!
And yesterday we recorded our re-rise of the Planet of the Apes. And today we are recording our re-dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Indeed.
But now we have a guest.
Yay, I get to be a guest again.
Golf clap.
Yay, go,
Yeah,
Bob.
so if you
Oddly
go
enough-
to our feed, Mark helped with our Sausage Party podcast.
Which was also a movie that had James Franco in it.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
blinked, you
anything.
missed him. And in this movie, if you blinked, you missed him.
Yeah, pretty much.
He is a powerful spice, that James Franco. You need to use him sparingly, or else he spoils the soup.
I don't know. I really like Spring Breakers, so
That movie's such a wild nutcaseness where it's just like, okay, and it's like that's like almost like a pot of gumbo. Everything needs to be strong in that in order for it to work. And he's just like, all right, he's just a lot of him because everybody else is a fucking cartoon character in that movie.
Yeah, but I don't think James Franco is the problem in that movie.
Oh no, there's a lot of
Whether you
other
like it or hate it.
true. He's probably the most normal and reasonable thing in that movie. And
Okay, maybe
that's-
he did fail in that movie, if that's what you think.
And that's the scary part of that movie. You look at him and it's like, he totally fits in here. I don't understand what the problem is. But anyway, talking about apes and their dawning.
yeah, it was really funny because this movie came out and it was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then a lot of people got confused because they're like, wait,
Oh, Jesus. Were people really debating that?
yeah, people were.
They're not
Especially in the
wrong.
market, it gets confusing with people.
They're not wrong, but I would at least say, folks, be thankful they're just not using the old movie titles and making this strict reboots. You're at least getting a new title. Just kind of roll with it.
I was really disappointed. I found out that there is sort of a cartoon mock-up of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and they called it Demise of the Planet of the Apes. And I'm really sad that that can't be a future movie title because that's awesome.
There actually used to be an old school Planet of the Apes cartoon that I think aired in the 70s, if not the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it had the apes with more slightly jazzed up technology. It's like, oh, you ever wanted to see the apes and the old school Planet of the Apes movies in helicopters? Well, here's your chance.
Well, originally, the Planet of the Apes novel, I think it was called Monkey Planet originally.
It was a French novel.
Yeah, by Peter Bouillet. I don't.
Mhm.
I'm probably butchering that name.
French author.
This isn't a French podcast. I think we're all good.
Yeah,
We're allowed to be boorish Americans. It's okay.
but for budgetary reasons and artistic choices based on Rod Serling's input, it got changed to a much more simplistic society that sort of made more sense. Now, I think that this movie fully realized those concepts in a much more plausible way
Mhm.
than the original series, but there's still a lot of respect that the filmmakers have to the original series.
Oh, definitely. Those nods are for sure there. In the original novel, the apes technology is a bit more advanced. And like you said, when they made the film with Charlton Heston, they looked at the book and went, we can't do all of this. This is too much money. We're investing a hell of a lot of money just to make apes on film. So they dialed it back, and they're living a more simpler, almost primitive life, but they still have culture. In this movie, it takes the intelligent apes just 10 years to master they can ride horses and maintain them just fine.
Equestrianism.
Equestrianism. They're masters of equestrianism in just 10 years. It's like,
I'm still pretty sure I didn't even say that right, though.
you're good. It's a lot better than what I was trying to mumble out. But yeah, just in 10 years, it's like, yeah, we got this horseback riding thing down pat, no problem. And I'm assuming within 10 years, they've also figured out how to breed them as well and ride them. We'd never get to see in the movie ape horse stables, but we just know that no, we have access to horses, and it's cool. And we've been doing this for a decade now. It's like, all right,
well,
then.
I think maybe one of the biggest challenges would be anatomically, how do all the different species of ape ride horses in a single generation? It's not like they've evolved to coexist with the horses or anything.
Right. We're basically not getting like humanoid apes who are like the size and the stature of people, but they look like apes. There's still chimpanzees, there's still orangutans. Like, no, but we're all riding on horses. It's cool, dude. It's the same horse, the same types of horses, all black horses. And that's the other thing. All black horses we're riding. We're not riding any palominos, anything else. Jet black horses. And Maurice the orangutan rides one, and a bonobo, Kubo rides one, and
there are no bonobos in this movie.
No saddles either. No saddle. We
no
have
saddles.
Riders, but no saddles. We're just riding ape back on horses. And there was a joke that a comedian, I can't remember who it was, years ago, made a thing about Planet of the Apes. It's like doing the movie Planet of the Apes, but from the horses' point of view, the planet of the horses being like, what the shit is going on? Like, things were fine, and now we have apes riding us now? This world's gone insane.
Going back to the original movie, one of the interesting things is that they almost didn't make the original movie because they were too concerned about how silly and preposterous the concept was. Right. So they were able to do some test run footage with an initial audience, and essentially the producers were like, if anybody laughs during this screening, we're pulling the movie. It's done. We're not going to do it. And everybody was just like on the edge of their seats. They were really riveted by the film, and now it's like 7 movies later and we're still going.
And it's interesting, you can find that footage now easily on YouTube. It's early makeup test stuff. The apes don't quite look like what they're going to look like finally. Also, you have character actor Edward G. Robinson playing Dr. Zaius, because he was originally slated to play the character. And after the test footage won the studio's sort of assurance that this was going to be a surefire thing, apparently Edgar G. Robinson went, guys, I got to bow out. Doing that makeup was rough, and I'm an older guy, and I can't foresee myself doing this day in and day out. So we almost had a Planet of the Apes movie with Edgar G. Robinson as Dr. Zaius. Yeah. But I think even Kim Novak, who played Charlton Heston's, not Kim Novak, Jesus Christ. I forget her name off the top of my head, but the gal who plays Nova in the movie, she's in ape makeup as well. So,
interesting.
They even make her up. I think she plays Zira in the test footage, and it's just something simple. It's them on one little set and them all interacting with each other, just to give an idea of this is how flexible the makeup can be. It's not like you're going to be talking through a rubber mask. You can emote somewhat in this. This isn't like a bunch of people wearing chimpanzee masks on their faces and looking like a bunch of idiots. You can do something serious with this.
Which is kind of what we had with the reboot with the mocap technology.
Yeah, and that's a nice segue. I think that, now I haven't seen Rise recently. I only have memories of it, but I just watched Dawn tonight for the first time probably since it came out, and I saw it in theaters. And mocap technology for this movie was pretty outstanding. And I believe it was one of the first times, if not the first time, they took mocap suits and put them in the filmed environments that they were shooting in. So they didn't do like post stuff in a studio and then all matted it together with green screen technology. It was just like, no, the actors are physically there with the human actors wear mocap suits. Everything is getting filmed and captured all at once, and then we're going back later on to replace everybody so that they're right there interacting with everybody. And I thought that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that was definitely the case with Rise. And usually, even if you look at the raw footage where they all have specs on their faces and cameras right there on their eyeline and, their gray onesies, there's enough commitment to the acting to still take it seriously, except for there's one shot where you can see full human Andy Serkis interacting with James Franco as young, tiny, itty baby Caesar, and it's kind of hysterical.
But to your point, Kira, I think if they hadn't done it that way, like how they originally did the first Ape film with the type of makeup technology, because at the time foam rubber appliances were still a new thing, with this new take on motion capture technology, you wouldn't have the same type of film. You wouldn't have the same level of acting and gravitas, and I think it would have been extra hard for the audience, let alone the actors in the movie, to take what they were doing seriously. It's like, you're going to be talking to an ape and he's going to be a tennis ball. It's like, I can't act off of that in the way that this movie needs the level of acting for. I need another actor here with me in order for this to work. And I think it works far better in this movie than what I can remember from the last movie. Because from what I can remember with the last movie, they're trying to cram in so much stuff in such a short amount of time. I even remember they had one of those cheesy throwaway lines from that bad script writers will do, of a character going, "Oh my God, can you believe it's only such and such amount of time has passed?" And it's like, oh, okay. I guess.
Wait, in Rise?
Yes. It's James Franco's girlfriend, from the actress from Slumdog.
Oh, yeah. She
like
did kind of say,
line. Yeah, it's like a throwaway line. It's like, okay, I get it. We're supposed to understand that time has passed, but Jesus, that felt fucking clunky. In this movie, it feels like there's far more room to stretch and to play out a story. And I think it was just an unfortunate situation of the first movie having a lot of ground to cover. It's like, okay, we have to set up this, because if we don't set up this won't make sense. And if we don't have that make sense, then this won't make sense. And we have to get them, by the end of the movie, fighting people, and at least someone has to ride a horse, and then we go across the Golden Gate Bridge and have a fight.
I mean, even if you compare Rise to Dawn in terms of not just how many deleted scenes Rise has over Dawn, but also the quality of what they had to cut, because they actually cut a lot of stuff that fucked up continuity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One of the things was when Caesar bites off the neighbor's finger.
Right.
There is just like a half a second of footage that they cut where you can see him sort of spit out the finger after he bites it off. And they cut just that one, like, half a second, and it fucks with the continuity. Or there's a scene where they're in a lab all the apes are there in the lab and they're about to attack Jacob, so like big evil corporate head guy. And then it cuts to he's standing outside getting help from like somebody in a helicopter, and it's like, why did you stay there? There was a whole extended scene talking about the apes chasing after him and how he got through that. That was like a whole thing that they had to chop down.
There were definite bits that I could remember from the first film that were for sure sort of cinematic screenwriting things and choices that made me go, okay, God, this is getting really hard to overlook or to forgive, because they keep stacking up the way they do. Like in the beginning of Rise, you have a pregnant chimpanzee, but we didn't know she was pregnant, but she somehow gave birth to a baby who's Caesar, and oh my God, this is such a surprise. And that's something that when I saw it made me go, all right, how is this going to be like a series of how many times I have to suspend my disbelief? I'm going to have to try to suspend my disbelief pretty soon when apes start, shooting guns and talking.
Yeah, we were talking in our podcast yesterday how like so much of the screenwriting is so smart, and then literally everything that takes place in the lab is so stupid. And it doesn't matter where you are in the film. Every time you go back to the lab, it's so ridiculous.
But then in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it feels like it's a lot smarter with its writing, but any sort of mistakes or things or clunkiness, you don't really notice until you look at it again or have somebody else point something out to you and go, oh yeah, that kind of didn't make sense. Oh yeah, that kind of didn't make sense. Huh, that's a little bit odd. But it moves at such sort of a steady clip, and you're sort of absorbed a lot, really, with what's going on with the apes, that you don't notice it, and it moves along, and it does a lot of show versus just tell, which makes up for some of the...
Yeah, and Dawn, the only real big plot hole I can think of is you have sort of this guy is Carver, but I call him Human Copa. He's the guy who always brings the gun. He's the guy who first shoots an ape. He's the guy who brings the gun when they're not supposed to bring guns. And it's just like, okay, he's the reason why the apes are pissed at you. He's clearly hostile towards the apes. Why was he one of the only people you brought with you to help fix the stupid dam?
Well, here's
he has no skill set.
Well, no. Here's the thing. They do set up, because this movie is good in that it has setups and payoffs that at first it's like, why would this happen? It's like, oh, why are you showing me? Oh, I see. There's a scene in the movie where Kerry Russell and bland white guy from Australia who was in Terminator Genesis are talking, and she goes, he makes some sort of comment about going back up there, and with the guy that, you know, shot Ash, Rocket's son, and Kerry Russell is like, you're taking him back after what he did. And he's like, he's the only one who knows how to make the dam work because he worked for the water company before all of this happened.
They say that, but then he's never at the dam site fixing things, especially not more than anybody else.
Well, he does get caught in the tunnel with bland white Australian guy, who's not Australian in the movie, but the lead.
Right.
Caught with the lead in the tunnel, he hurts his leg, so he is with the lead in the tunnel and gets hurt because of that.
No, he's there.
They just don't show enough of him to be like,
hey, he's fixing the dam. Look how important he was.
I'm working on this thing and I'm doing stuff, or showing him with like a set of blueprints of, okay, this is where we need to go. They set it up as a reason as to why are we taking this unstable guy who seems a little trigger happy and angry at apes because of this reason. Okay, the next step is I need to see a little bit extra then.
Well, the other thing too was if you seriously just made this one guy two separate characters who had similar trains of thought about apes versus humans, then that would literally solve your problem. You wouldn't even have to change the script. You just need two different actors.
Or split that up against two characters that you already have, because you have anonymous large black man #1 and this trigger happy guy with the baseball cap.
Yeah.
The large anonymous guy is just kind of there as sort of an extra character.
I call him the human Cornelia.
But we never find anything more about him. He's at first reluctant to be with the apes, and he's sort of no better than the guy with the baseball cap, and then he kind of turns around and he's the guy that shoves baseball cap in the truck at one point, so he's clearly on the side of the good guys, and it's like, all right, this is kind of all that he's doing in this movie. But there's some bits and pieces that, when you look back at them, they kind of don't quite make sense. Like, Koba sets fire to the ape village and then shoots Caesar in order to show that, oh god, look, the humans, we can't trust them at all. But while the apes react to Caesar getting shot and Koba showing them and the gun in the hat, everyone's kind of not paying attention to the fact that, hey, there's a huge goddamn fire behind us. No one's seeing that. No one's feeling that until Koba kind of points it out. Hey, look, they set fire to our home. And they're like, oh my God, look at, where did that come from? And even when he points it out to them, they're still kind of milling around like, okay, what are we going to do now? It's like, how about we get the fuck out of here because our home's on fire and we're kind of just milling around here. I think we'd call kind of being a panic. Okay, I guess we're not in a panic. Where do we keep the horses again?
Well, I also thought it was weird that they were like, oh, hey, it's the humans who are killing, who killed Caesar, but the humans were right there with them the whole time.
Yeah. It's like, oh, we haven't seen them in 10 winters. The last 2 winters, no lights. It's like, I guess they're done for. Okay, well, that makes sense. But I guess we don't really travel very far outside of our sort of mountaintop home. And then we come across a random guy who's ahead of the group for whatever reason in the forest. And then shit goes down. And other little bits and bobs, like the fact that Dreyfus, who's Gary Oldman's character, and I'm going to lay into Gary Oldman in a little bit, tells the
Why
lead.
in a little bit? Do it now.
He's going to get his own little chunk, but I'm just going to address this point. Another little plot hole is him, after Gary Oldman calms the massive crowd, which is shot in a tight shot, so it looks like, 30 people is really like 100 people. He tells the ladies, is like, we better figure something out with that dam because, speeches aren't going to keep these people, occupied for long. We're 2 weeks away from going completely out of fuel. It's like, motherfucker, what? 2 weeks and we're done with the fuel? Why didn't we start looking for the fucking dam like months ago? Or do we not figure out there was a dam nearby? Or how
That's
does that
what it
work?
seemed like. It looked like they sort of had just realized, hey, we went out to go see what other power supply there was. We found a dam. That looks cool. But on the way back from the dam, oh shit, there's monkeys around and we can't fight them. Whoops.
Right. The way they're set up in that whatever tower building place is, it seems like, oh, they've set up shops, they've set up a home for themselves, they've obviously been there for a while. This isn't a group of nomadic people that has just sort of wandered into San Francisco. It's like, all right, well, we just rolled in last night. I think we'll be here for a while. It's like, oh, no, you guys have been here for a while. Good. Are you from here? Did you migrate from someplace else and you've been here for several months, if not, I don't know, maybe half a year? Do you not know the area at all? How did you figure out about the dam? And it's all sort of incidental stuff, it feels like, until you start looking at it just a slightly bit closer, and it makes you go, okay, some shit doesn't start to add up. Why you bother looking for fuel now? And on and on and on and on and on.
I think there's also a sense of like Walking Dead fatigue, where it's
Yeah.
like everybody's seen multiple seasons of The Walking Dead at this point. Do we really need to do that again?
Oddly enough, the guy with the baseball cap was in an episode of The Walking Dead.
Yep.
So he was, because part of this movie was shot down in New Orleans. Not New Orleans, Louisiana? I forget where, maybe Atlanta. Atlanta, yeah. And so he was able to take a break from this to go shoot stuff in The Walking Dead. And okay, I'll since we're sort of nitpicking bits and pieces that don't quite work, I'll lay into Gary Oldman into this movie. Gary Oldman, what are you doing in this movie, in this role? Because you're given nothing to do. This movie is smart in that it doesn't do what the first film does, which is try to overly explain things or explain things in very clunky ways. It's smart.
It kind of does.
It's smart to show stuff.
Yeah.
Just show it versus I'm going to say what this is so you all know. And I'm going to make sure you all know because I said this thing. I mean, some of the basic stuff has to be explained in order to catch up the audience as to what's going on between the first and last movie with the apes and yada, yada, yada. But you do see stuff like, oh, they've built this society. Maurice is teaching baby apes letters and things. Versus,
oh my god, I love that part.
And the 3 laws,
and instructing a group of like, now this is the letter A. It's like, no. You pay little chimpanzee who's not paying attention to me. Pay the fuck attention. I'm drawing an A, and this is what A looks like. Now look at me.
I did think it was interesting that there were also pictograms in the
You see a pictogram of not Brooklyn Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge at one point on the wall, and there's also little bits and pieces, and there's little pieces like when they're walking through the woods, I think like the second time, you hear these dunk, dunk, dunk sounds. It's not the music track. If you notice on the trees, there's gourds hanging from them, and it's there to collect the rainwater. And if you don't notice it, it's not a huge thing. But if you do notice it, it's like, yeah, they set those up there to catch fresh water. This is an advanced society. for Apes to be doing.
The production design in this movie is really brilliant. Just little stuff like that, stuff that a large majority of the audience probably wouldn't get. I just find fascinating because it allows rewatchability and like catching little bits and pieces here and there.
And then there's the bit with Gary Oldman. For Gary Oldman, we really don't know who the fuck he is. He's just the leader, but we don't know how he got there or what sort of skill set he has. We're never explained until the power comes back on and his iPad comes back on. And the first picture we see, it's a picture of him in the military. And then it's a picture of his family. And he doesn't say anything, but obviously we haven't seen him with these people that are his family in the movie so far. They must be dead. And then it stops on a picture of his 2 sons, and then he starts to cry.
Which is the whole reason why Gary Oldman is in the movie.
Right, and that is and it explains everything neat and tidy, and it shows you everything without talking, which is what you're supposed to fucking do with film. It's show, not tell. We just got shown everything about this guy in this little scene, and it was an emotional scene, and he sells it.
Which is the entire reason he's there.
Right, but unfortunately with Gary Oldman as a character, he's just not given a lot to do. He's not made to feel like a big enough threat. It's really Koba who's the bigger villain and enemy. And Gary Oldman just kind of feels like an afterthought because it's like, well, the humans have to have a villain too. And he's just never made to feel either scary enough or villainous enough or that much of a threat. It's more or less humans are the threat versus this one particular leader of the humans is the threat. And that's kind of a downside for him because like you have a talented actor here, but he's basically sort of going through the motions of him being Commissioner Gordon from the Dark Knight series. All he did was shave his mustache and wear mostly black in this movie, and that's him.
Well, the other thing, too, is he's barely in the movie.
And there's that. So it doesn't really establish him as any sort of a thing. I was just like, have him shoot an ape. Because the thing that I'm going to call this Chekhov's chimp, we get introduced that Caesar has a son, and quite coincidentally and miraculously, it happens just as he's coming back from the hunt. It's like, what a shock. This happened. What a coincidence. It happens right as you're coming back from the hunt you had, and your wife just gives birth to a baby. And it's like, okay, this is convenience sake for the script. It happens a couple other times with some other points. It's one of those movie sins that on first watch, you're like, I don't notice it really. Second watch, it's like, oh yeah, they did that. That's a little too convenient that this keeps happening the way it does. So he has a little baby, which the baby's name is Milo, but we never know that in the movie because they never say his name. And that's a nod to the original series.
Yeah, that's Escape, right?
Yep, that's Dr. Milo, who gets murdered by a gorilla, a real gorilla. So you have a baby chimp, and when I first saw the movie in theaters, in my head I went, that baby's gonna die. Someone's gonna kill that baby. That baby's gonna get a bullet in the fucking head. Because I've seen movies and the dog always dies. And this is pretty much, the baby chimp is that, and it's an adorable little baby. And I'm waiting for a bad guy to reveal themselves as a big enough bad guy or Koba as a big enough bad guy and murder this baby. Baby uncovers a surprise pump action shotgun at one point. So I guess there's the payoff with Chekhov's chimp. Is if you introduce it, but my interpretation of that was if you introduce a baby chimp in the first scene, that baby chimp is going to have to die by the end of the third scene. But that doesn't really happen. But yeah, it does. They don't really establish Gary Oldman as a big enough villain or threat. I mean, it seems like each of these movies gets a bit better every time they do it. The first one had James Franco, and fucking Christ, I don't like him. And I really felt that he was out of place to play that character. But it wasn't a horrible film, and they were also trying to cram a lot into one film, and it kind of felt long in spots. With this movie, they upped the ante. It's like, all right, this is a lot better. You're doing a lot more with the apes. You see their society. You're with them a lot longer. There's long stretches of time where you're just with them versus cutting back to the boring human characters. But then you don't really have a great human villain, but you have a really good ape villain, and the movie kind of ends the way it does on a cliffhanger with the with Christ Chimp. What it looks like for this third film is they've cast a really good actor as the human villain.
Wait, no, stop.
Okay.
I haven't seen any trailers. I don't know who's in it. I don't know the villain.
Okay.
I don't know any of this.
I will just say.
Nope.
I'm not going to say who it is.
Nope. You're not going to say anything. Nope.
Okay. It looks, I will only say it looks like they're improving still.
Okay.
And I'm really interested to see where they go with it. And that's kind of been the only reason why I've been willing to give these 8 movies a chance is the first one made me go, oh, gee, okay, I'm along for the ride. And okay, now he's on a fucking horse now. All right, suspend my disbelief on that because why the fuck not? And then in the second movie, it was just like, well, that first movie wasn't so bad. Huh. I really like what they're doing with this second movie. Why are they cutting back to the boring people? I don't give a fuck about Kerry Russell. All right, we're back with the apes again. Okay, I like this. And I have seen the trailer for the new film. I saw the shortest trailer. I have not seen anything extended because after I saw the first small trailer, I was like, I don't need to see any more. Opening day.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really don't like about trailers nowadays. It's like, I'm gonna watch the movie. I'm already sold. What's funny about some of them is like with my Batman v Superman retrospective review, I just use shots from the trailer to make a full video because that's how much gets clumped into these trailers. I mean, you essentially have a large portion of the movie condensed into a very short form. And I really wish they would stop that with trailers.
I would also wish that they would stop releasing whole scenes to be viewed by audiences before the movie comes out as a way to sell the movie. Like recently, they released a whole fight scene from the upcoming Charlize Theron movie, Atomic Blonde.
Atomic Blonde, yes.
And I was like, I've seen the trailer. I want to see it. I don't need to see this fight scene because I'd like to see that in the theater when I pay for my ticket. You already have got me to go. Why are you trying to sell this harder? You have Charlize Theron, who's a fucking badass, and you have a bunch of other really good character actors in this movie. She's beating the shit out of people and is super cool. I don't need to see a whole chunk of the film.
Dawn kind of did that too. They included the shot of Koba machine gunning down those 2 guys in like all of the trailers.
Yeah.
So every time you see Koba with those guys, you already knew that was going to be the end of it, which sucks because they built the tension up really well in the movie, and then they spoiled it with their stupid trailer.
Yeah, they played that out really well, and that's another thing about the movie. There's, like I said before, there's a lot of setups and there's a lot of payoffs. It like compare it to a really crap movie that's come out recently, Suicide Squad.
Can we not compare them in any way, shape, or form?
Well, in that movie, there were so many setups, but then payoffs that never happened, or payoffs that happened in an odd way that made you go, well, what was the point of that?
Mm-hmm.
I saw a video, actually, where they specifically talked about the unicorn.
Yes,
and
that
how
was
the unicorn didn't pay off in any way, shape, or form, and it was an obvious nod to Deadpool as well.
Yeah. Well,
but in a lazy way.
It looks it looks like it's going to pay off in Suicide Squad because he has the unicorn and he takes it. He looks around and he puts it in his jacket, and you think, okay, I've just seen the setup. Something's going to happen with that unicorn later, and then later in the movie, he gets stabbed in the chest, and oh my God, they killed Captain Boomerang. But no, he opens up his jacket and you go, okay, he's gonna pull out that unicorn. It's like, oh no, it's a wad of money. Okay. That doesn't make any sense because we got set up with the unicorn, but we got paid off with a wad of cash that he stole at some point, but we didn't see.
And it might have been funny if they did that and it was something that was more humorous. Like maybe if you had reversed it, where it was like, oh, he has a wad of money, he puts it in his jacket, and then what saved his life at the end was this little pink fluffy unicorn that you never saw.
Right. At least to acknowledge the fact that, all right, remember, guys, though, the unicorn's still in my jacket, and thank God it wasn't hurt. But I think that just more or less shows that the horrible reshoots for that movie were an ultimate problem of, you guys didn't watch all that happened in the first chunk of this movie, did you? Because if you did, you would have known that we were trying to set up a gag and you didn't follow through with it, and now this looks really odd for the audience. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, you don't get that. It's like almost everything that gets set up has a payoff of some kind. There's some clunky bits where it's like, we need to get to the dam, but we have sort of 3 chances to talk to Caesar before things get confrontational. We don't do that at all. Like when they first meet him in the woods, all I have to say is, we're in desperate need. Where's the dam? Yada, yada, yada. No, we got to go back home. Okay, now we have another confrontation when they're at the tower with all the apes showing up on horseback. There's like, the only reason why we went to your forest is because there's a dam, yada, yada, yada. If you let us do that, no, can't do that. We have to now go into the forest another time, talk to Caesar in person, and that's the only way this is going to resolve things. It's like, no, I can't just tell you, I have to show you. It's like, okay, now this is 4 times I'm trying to get explained something. So shit like that gets clunky. But then there's other things.
Yeah, but like in that situation, part of the reason why he's like, I've got to show you, is because he's not really that sure how intelligent they are. Like at that point, he knows they can say very basic words, and that's impressive. But he doesn't know if he tells them, hey, there's a dam and it has an hydraulic pump and we need to go and reroute the water lines so then it powers our city. You know, he doesn't know that if he tells Caesar that without anything to back it up, that he's going to understand anything he's talking about.
Yeah, especially the first time, because they were so fucking stunned that the apes spoke that they were just speechless.
And they only said one word. Like, he doesn't know if Caesar understands complicated engineering concepts.
I guess I just wanted some of that stuff to be a bit more streamlined, because watching it again tonight, there were bits and chunks of that movie that, I'm not a gamer, but I know how video games work, where it almost felt like these were achievements, these were tasks to get through in a video game. I have to go to the tower to find medical supplies to make Caesar feel better. Or the next task is to go back to the mountains to talk to Caesar. And so some things felt natural, some things felt kind of, it needs to be there in order to move the plot along, but it very much feels like it. But the thing, like I'm saying, I was getting at before, there's a lot of setup and there's a lot of payoff. There's setup in the beginning where they're hunting elk, and obviously Caesar sees the marks on the tree, but his son doesn't listen to him. They're set up with Koba killing the bear and saving Blue Eyes, Caesar's son, and Blue Eyes being frustrated that he's scarred, but then Koba saying scars make you tough, and then Caesar's son sort of siding with Koba later on in the movie. So it's all this, we're doing one thing, and then another thing is going to happen later on. And for the most part, they really don't drop the ball on much that I can think of as to, we're going to introduce this, because it's going to pay off with this.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to get at is, you know, you're bringing up some of the stuff with like, oh, well, the human bad guys aren't as bad as Koba. You know, they're not like this big, bad, evil villain, which, I mean, for sure, like, they definitely don't have the kind of presence and intrigue. But one of the things that the movie does really well is it creates a lot of parallels between the two human villains and Koba. And one of the things that they all have in common is that they're all right. Like, they're all correct in the way they think about things. You know, they're not really wrong. Like, when Commissioner Gordon has all that C4 and he's like, I'm going to save the entire human race right now by blowing everything up. He doesn't know that he's wrong.
And he also doesn't really blow up the tower very well either.
No, he definitely doesn't do a good job of blowing up the tower at all. Everybody's fine. It's totally okay, you guys. Like, one ape died, and that was actually really sad. Right. But, like, all the humans are fine, and they were at the bottom.
One of the things that I really like about this series, though, is the fact that, like, each death means something, yes, which you don't see a lot in franchise movies. Like,
I had to clear my throat so I could enunciate it better, you see?
Yeah, but how long did it take for that movie to come out?
Only 30 years.
Exactly. Awesome. So I'm talking about, like, franchise movies that are not auteur.
Oh, wait. Are you going to talk shit about Dawn now, saying it's not an auteur film? Fuck you. You need to go sit in your corner with your fake
that was started by somebody else, and somebody else was picking on. And now Matt Reeves is taking over the franchise, but
So you're saying that disqualifies him as an auteur of the franchise? Like, dude, that's cruel.
I'm not saying that. I'm talking about I'm talking about franchises like DC Cinematic Universe, like so many mainstream films. I mean, fuck, even the Hunger Games. Well, the Hunger Games did actually make the deaths have meaning, but so many like action films like Fast and Furious and all this kind of stuff, they don't. Anybody who's not outside of the main cast doesn't really mean shit. However, these films are not doing that.
But I think that's a trend that has been picking up in a lot of these bigger movies. I think you're wrong.
In this movie, at least, as far as people who die, it's the main cast still stays intact. Yeah, out of the apes, who really gets killed? Well, Rocket's son Ash gets killed, but
that was pretty sad though. Like that was pretty brutal.
It was very sad, but we get introduced to him in this movie. But Rocket doesn't die, and he was a holdover from the first film.
Yeah, but Rocket was also
actually trying to get almost not even in the movie. Side characters, because with so many films, if people in the main cast die, then of course it's sad. But in this film, it just spends a couple extra seconds to show, oh, this battle that Koba led the apes to, there are several apes that were slaughtered in this battle. There were also humans that were slaughtered in this battle. And
they don't focus on the humans nearly as much as the apes, though. Like, don't even kick it.
Right, because it is it is from the apes' perspective. And honestly, I was really happy about that because we have almost 99% of our movies that come out are centered around humans. So having a movie that's centered around a different perspective is kind of nice.
It is, and it certainly gives things sort of a break and a nice change of pace. Even if that change of pace may struggle a bit, it's like, at least this is fucking different. Which, it's one of the gripes that I know a lot of people don't fucking like to hear, of why the direction of the DC films versus the Marvel films is a bit better in that, well, at least every goddamn film isn't just yet another introduction to another beloved character, an origin story. It's more or less bigger things with each film. It's not just the introduction of Superman. It's going to be Superman and Batman fighting each other. It's not just the introduction to Batman for the next movie. It's the introduction to Wonder Woman, and then they're going to be in the movie all together with each other, versus Marvel, which is just like, oh, here's a lovable asshole that winds up finding himself and fights a villain that isn't very memorable, and at the end of the movie he learns a few lessons, but at the end he's still a lovable asshole, and let's plug that next movie, and then let's rinse and repeat for the next 2 or 3 films until we have a film where all these guys start together in.
But I thought with Wonder Woman, it was completely retconning that shit and trying to do the Marvel formula after 3 movies have already passed in the cinematic universe.
Well, and it also failed at it.
Yeah. But to get back to Dawn, I like that we had a major chunk of the movie in the fucking beginning where it's just like, oh, no, this shit's in subtitles, dudes. You're going to see this shit. You're going to watch a bunch of chimpanzees talk to each other in ASL, and they're going to hunt some fucking elk. And they're going to be wearing some war paint. Why are they wearing war paint while they hunt in the forest where it's mostly earth tones and they have white on their skin? Because it looks cool. Don't think too much about it. It just looks cool.
Don't think about it, Morty.
Exactly. They're sticking out like sore thumbs. Doesn't fucking matter. They're fighting elk. And
well, actually, that's something I really liked about that hunting scene is that they prove that they have all of the skills and capabilities to be extraordinarily stealthy hunters.
Yeah.
But that part of the reason why they hunt is not just for sustenance, it's also for fun. So, like, the whole part where, I mean, their entire strategy is we're going to scare the elk into the oncoming army, and then they're going to fight it out, and it's dangerous and somebody gets hurt, and it totally didn't have to go down that way. But part of the reason why it did was because it's fucking exciting.
I will say one of the nice little bits of business right before that in the beginning of the film is that, hey, guess what? You didn't see the first movie? That's cool. We're going to catch you up on everything you need to know, the bare bones of it, in this opening montage of the globe spinning around. Here's everything.
Like, it fits in perfectly with the original series and as a sequel to Rise, but then it also works perfectly just by itself with nothing else.
Right. It's like, you don't need to know any more than this. It's great if you do. If you don't, that doesn't matter. We're giving you all of the information you know right away. Is this a little cliche that we're showing the map this way? Sure, fuck it is. I don't give a rat's ass, though.
But I really like the part
really
where
quick
it
and
comes
fast.
around and all the red lights are gone, and then they all go out and it's just black.
And there's no more newscasters reporting this. It's just people over a radio. It creates a very desperate, lonely feel. And it's like, this is all you need to know. It's done very quickly, very efficiently. It's like the fucking beginning of the movie Up. It's like, we get a whole little story encapsulated in just a few quick beats, and now we're all up to speed. Now the movie proper can begin. We know all that we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, some of the screenwriters behind Contagion were responsible for that opening, which explains a lot. They were able to set up a plausible way for this rather implausible situation to happen.
Right. Because wasn't in the original series, they sort of make a half-assed attempt to be like, all right, this is what happened. Was it Conquest for the Planet of the Apes or Battle of the Planet of the Apes?
Conquest is the fourth one with Caesar.
Right, where you have our Armando, I'm going to butcher his goddamn name, Armando Santaban?
Sure.
Okay. The wonderful Latin man with the lovely mustache. He tells Caesar that, oh yeah, at some point in time, all the cats and dogs died, and we don't know why. So people started taking apes as pets, and they started to learn like them and act like them, and then they became upright walking creatures that now wear jumpsuits and do janitorial jobs. It's like, really? That's what you're really gonna? Okay, that's what we have to go on, huh? Thank you. Thank you.
And especially in that movie, the racial parallels are in no way subtle.
Right. It's like people were really adopting gorillas as pets. Really now? Really? And orangutan. Okay. All right. I'll making me suspend a lot of disbelief here in the movie. And to touch on the old films, this new film has just enough little beats in it that fans of the old original series can look at it and go, okay, I see what you did there. That's cute. I like that. Some of the music with the apes has a very sound and beat to it that sounds very much like music you would have heard from that first film. When anytime they were at the Ape Village, it's not exactly the same, but it has a very familiar sound to it. Like, all right, that's nice. The fact that Maurice is teaching the apes, like ape shall not kill ape. It's basically setting
Apes
him
together
up like
strong.
Right. It's basically setting him up as the lawgiver.
Exactly. Yep.
And the fact that bland leading man comes to the ape village, and it's a gorilla gatekeeper, and it's a bunch of gorillas that are sort of the brute force that bring him in. It's like, okay, now we have sort of this segregation that's not overtly stated, but shown that, okay, the gorillas are the muscle here, and they're kind of like really big soldiers. There's all little hints of things that you may not have noticed it, but your brain did. And it's there if you notice it, and it's wonderful if you see it. If you didn't, that's okay, because there's enough other stuff going along to entertain you.
I would need to go back and watch the original films again with all of this fresh in my mind. But to my understanding, this new series doesn't conflict with the chronology so far.
No, the idea is that this is supposed to, at least with the first film, with Charlton Heston, be the lead-up prequels to the Charlton Heston
films. Because after Battle, it resets the timeline.
Right. So that's the idea. At least the two first Charlton Heston films, before they go through space and go through the wormhole and go back in time again.
Yep.
It's the idea that those two first films, this is leading up to those first two films. In fact, I don't know, because unfortunately I didn't listen to it, for the podcast you guys did for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, did you notice the little nod they gave to the Icarus flight
You think we didn't notice? That's
I don't
so
fucking know.
adorable.
It's
That's
just like,
cute.
and it's just there if you notice it, and if you don't, that's okay, because there's also all this other crazy bullshit going on, and we know we're throwing a lot at you, but if you noticed it, it's there. You might not have noticed it, but your brain did.
There's a deleted scene where there are actually two puzzles, and one is of New York, and the other is two people on a beach on horseback, and there's like a little bit of a hill too.
Nice. Can we all agree that the human characters in this movie are not given much to do, and this is really the Apes film, and it's great that the apes have a lot of stuff, but it also kind of makes it unfortunate that when we have to cut back to the humans, it's like, oh great, we're stuck with you guys again.
It's kind of like a really more uninteresting The Dark Knight, where it's like, oh yeah, you guys are talking about all of these really interesting ideas and political standpoints, and you have like all of these interesting expositions about your backstories, but like, I just don't really care because you're boring. Like, there's no emotion after that.
It's kind of no surprise that a lot of these leads, Kerry Russell, uninteresting, bland guy who's the lead.
We can remember all the apes' names, and all the humans were like, that
Right.
one.
Like, I don't know who the fuck that is. They're mostly television actors. And Matt Reeves, television director, got his big start doing Felicity, the TV show Felicity, which is why Kerry Russell.
Which is why she's in it, yeah.
But Australian dude who was in Terminator Genesis, he got his big start doing a lot of TV. And that kind of makes me look at it and go,
there's amazing acting in television, though. But these are a lot of people who are from, like, older TV.
Right. I think it's something along the lines of, you guys have a lot of TV experience, and that's great, but you need more better chops and movie experience to pull off some more gravitas with what little you're probably being given for this movie, which is one of the things that I hope they learn a lesson from for this next film.
Right, and actually a lot of the more emotional moments were when everybody just sort of shut up, like the gas station scene where nobody's talking. You don't need to talk.
No, I mean, look at the beginning of the fucking movie. None of those fucking apes talked. And
right, exactly.
We have subtitles, but even if we didn't have subtitles, you would probably be able to understand what was going on enough to get the gist of what the story was and not feel like you're being left out.
One of the reasons why I was kind of sad that the movie wasn't more emotional is because this is a movie where you actually had 4 men crying. And you kind of only care when the apes do it.
Also, can we mention that this movie has chimp midwives?
Well, yeah, so?
It just sort of made me kind of go, oh, that's right. That's the thing in this movie. I forgot. And they're wearing little surgical masks?
Well, it's a ceremony. It's more of a ceremonial thing than like a medical thing.
And
yeah, there's actually a deleted scene where the ceremony actually goes on further, and there's some stuff outside, and like Maurice and Caesar hang out, and then like they're celebrating the harvest along with this child being born.
That would have been really nice to see.
I was arguing with Casey because I thought it was a great scene, and she said that for pacing reasons, it probably shouldn't.
I agree, but it's one of those. I'm sure it was one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you do it, it gets slogged down with pacing, and it makes the apes look even more interesting versus the humans. And if you don't do it, then
it actually made the apes look a little bit more cheesy, I think, because like one of the elements in the scene is Caesar presents Koba with the skin of the bear that he killed. Says, oh, you saved my life. Here, be rewarded. And it's like this whole grandiose to-do, which doesn't really make a lot of sense with the like more down-to-earth society that they have. And it's just, you already had that scene done better in the movie of Caesar genuinely thanking Koba for saving his life and establishing we're best buds. We literally will risk our lives for each other all the time. But you did it better already, so just cut it.
That makes sense. I like the fact that they make it a very clear point of it's only been 10 years, and we have the apes living in a little society, they didn't go fucking crazy with how the apes were living. It's just like, yeah, it's a bunch of trees that we knocked down and sort of made a fort out in the woods. We're not in sort of a, Wookiee treehouse right now celebrating Life Day on whatever fucking planet the Wookiees are on. We're not that
Right.
advanced. Just we've just figured out horses. We're not up to treehouse with elevator technology just yet. So bear with us. And I like that. I like that it's just like, this is believable in a film that I'm supposed to believe that apes can talk and ride horses and things.
Yeah, I mean, like,
that was very interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think some of the most progressive stuff that they do is they collect water, they ride horses, and they can control fire really well.
Right. They know, yeah.
That's about it, That's a good amount for one generation and then their offspring.
And they know how to hunt in an organized fashion. It's not just them going willy-nilly after some wild animals and getting their asses kicked. And it looks like they're not just hunting, but they're fishing too. The other thing that I liked about this movie is I liked the character design and the CGI. The CGI is hit and miss sometimes, but for most of the big important scenes, the CGI is very good. And it had to be, because if it wasn't, this movie would have looked laughable. But I like the fact that the characters, I could tell the difference between them, and not just because, oh, his name is Blue Eyes because he has blue eyes, or he got attacked by a bear, and that's why we know who he is because he's got the scars on him. It's like, it was more than that. It's like, I know who fucking Rocket is because he looks fucking different than the other chimps. I know who his fucking son is because he looks a lot like Rocket, but he's slightly different and smaller. So they did a good enough job differentiating, and even the background apes, in a lot of cases, are differentiated enough so it's just look like a pile of similar looking apes. It's just like, no, they're all a bit different. They look a bit different, and they're not just the same stamp of chimp or gorilla or orangutan. They all look different.
Yep, that's Weta.
Yeah, they're not orcs.
No, they're not. Oh god, they're not fucking orcs. I love Maurice the orangutan. He's like the most charming fucking
Maurice is the best.
And I love it that he's played by a woman.
Yeah, and she's really awesome. She has a couple of orangutan friends that she in two different zoos in two different states, and she just sort of goes back and forth between hanging out with them all the time.
And she had to wear these like big fucking weights on her arms to give her the sort of feeling of what it was like. And I love it in Rise of the Planet of the Apes when Caesar meets Maurice for the first time. It's like, you speak sign? As it just gives a simple explanation. I can't think of what the sign is, but it's really cute. It's just like, circus orangutan. And that's all he has to say. It's like, it's adorable. And instantly in my head I thought, oh, it's Dr. Zaius. He's met Dr. Zaius. Oh, his name's Maurice. Okay, that's cute still.
And it was also really cool how in the first movie, the signing thing is just a sort of the two of them thing. I mean, I know a lot of people were like, there's too much signing, but it's really cool to see how they shared that thing that only the two of them could do with everybody as, the symbolic, we are sharing the knowledge, because that's one of our 3 laws.
Right.
Anybody who's complaining about too much signing should just go stick with Transformers.
I mean, they also make it a good point of being like, no, we're teaching letters too. So I'm assuming if we're teaching letters, we're teaching people how to talk, if not talk, at least how to write. So that's important, or to read. So we're doing a couple different things with that. And when ape characters do speak, at first, it's done for very specific, important things.
Right, and it's really nice that Caesar and Koba are the only 2 that speak a lot of English, and only 2 other apes, including Bright Eyes, speak any English at all. Because if you think about it, most of the apes are already bilingual. They have their normal ape expressions, vocally and physically, but then they also have sign language, which is essentially a secondary language for them. So it's not like all of the apes after only 10 years would all be trilingual. I mean, that's a little ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's faster learners than others. Also, I know in the first film, he's taking those canisters of gas and he's rolling them down the hallways, and the apes that are getting exposed to them in the facility are the ones that become incredibly intelligent. And then they also free some apes from a nearby zoo. Am I correct?
Right,
Yes.
and I think that was more of a, some of the apes are scientifically advanced, and then some of the apes, they had to learn how to catch up to everybody else.
And then you're having at least 10 years worth of apes breeding with each other, and what is that going to produce? So you have a mixed bag of kids of folks now.
Well,
So,
one of the things that Casey pointed out when we were watching this film was that Bright Eyes was talking and signing at the same time. So he clearly is a generation past this, and they're young are going to be smarter and smarter. It's this whole concept of mental evolution that they're experiencing. So I expect that's going to be pushed further in the next film as well.
I'm sure, because each of these films looks like it's advancing a bit more, not just with the story, but also with how they're addressing things and how they're going about their business of things, and also how well of a story and script it is. Again, another little subtle thing, a little rock that Caesar stands on that has that symbol on it, and then Blue Eyes makes the symbol in the window of the bus. It's supposed to be the symbol for Caesar. And it's like, okay, but why is that I'm assuming that means something about Caesar, but why is it that symbol? Oh, look, in the next scene, he's in the attic, and that's what the window design is. And it's never sort of like, and this is why the symbol for Caesar is what it is. Just like, no, it's in the background. If you noticed it, that's great. If you didn't, that's fine. You might not have noticed it, but your brain did, and there you go. It's just there.
I can't imagine how fun it would be to work on the production design team for these movies.
I think it would either be fun or be a goddamn nightmare, because
Nope, it would be fun.
I can imagine someone getting behind it being like, motherfucker, what did I sign myself up for? This is and again, little setup and payoff. They pass by the 76 gas station, and you see this thing which is obviously turned into a relic of a bygone era. And then when they get the power back on, what is the thing that clues them in that the power's on? The 76 gas station lights are on. Again, this is a setup, and it's a payoff, and it's beautiful. And it's all done visually versus spelling things out and talking about them, which I'm so goddamn tired of movies fucking doing. It's a visual medium. Use it as a visual medium. If you want to talk about shit, write a fucking book. I've harped on that a couple of times already, but it honestly is the truth. Think of how many films you guys have seen probably within the last year or two when you've thought to yourself or someone pointed out to you, they could have just shown that. Or why is he talking about that instead of doing it? And it seems like, I don't know what the reason is if it's like insecure directing or insecure screenwriting, or
It's producers being worried that the movie is not dumb enough for audiences to understand.
I swear there are a ton of producers that need to get fired, not the directors, not the people behind movies, the producers. A great example is, did you know that the same director of The Wolverine also directed Logan?
Really?
Yeah. Clearly, that's the type of movie he wanted to make. And the studio stepped in and they said, we want robot samurais and shit like that. And that's a true story. That's what he said.
It's funny you mentioned that, because one, if not two, of the writers on this movie also wrote The Wolverine. Yeah, I'm kind of not surprised that that's probably the case of producers being so desperate to make sure they keep their jobs that they have to water down the product so that everyone will understand it and everyone will like it, and it'll make money across the board because it doesn't offend anybody, or it makes all the right choices and yada, yada, yada. But
then it just makes me not want to watch the movie in the theater a second time.
It makes me
I watched Logan in the theater twice. I watched Dawn of the Planet of the Apes twice. I actually thought Rise was going to be crap until I saw it on home video, and then I was like, holy shit, why didn't I watch this in the theater?
Yeah, I saw Rise 6 years ago when I was living in Portland, Oregon, and it was just me and the date, and I think we were the only ones in the theater. And I can remember several times just sort of leaning over to her while the movie was going on. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are they doing this now? Did you hear that woman honestly say that it's, can you believe it's been this many months? And I was just pointing out all of these tropes that were just like, this is, but then again, it wound up doing enough things to make me go, all right, you have my attention again. Okay, we're gonna electrify Draco Malfoy. I like this. Let's do that now.
And I also liked how this movie felt in no way a retread of the first movie, which is part of the biggest problem of so many movies that come out nowadays, where it's like, oh, we're making a sequel to this movie, so it's gonna be like this movie, except we're gonna put a little bit more here and put a little bit more here and slop a different name on it. And
because honestly, what it winds up feeling like is Evil Dead 2, where the first chunk of the movie is us rehashing what happened in the last movie, and now like a whole half hour or so in, we can actually start with the meat of what the actual sequel is going to be. And let's go for, and oh, by the way, we also have to spend like a nice chunk of time at the very end setting up the next film. This movie didn't do any of that. It caught you up really quickly on what happened in the first movie right away, and then we're off and running. In fact, this movie, you could pluck it out from the trilogy and it would stand on its own.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have needed to have seen what happened before, and honestly, you wouldn't needed to have seen what happens next. It'd be nice too, but it very much is its own film. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is part of a trilogy, but taking it out of the context of the trilogy doesn't diminish its ability to tell a complete story, which is the sign of what a film should do. It has, or the story should do. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end, and tell a complete story, and not feel like this is just an installment of a bigger thing that you had to watch the other things in order to understand. And now, what's the fucking point?
Yeah, I think that's also good from a marketing standpoint, because people can go into these films, and I'm hoping that the third one does that to a certain extent as well, because I have this feeling that if you just catch people up a little bit, maybe through sort of the same beginning that this one had, but do something clever with it. I think it gets people that may not have seen the other films up to pace, making them want to go back and watch the other films, but it isn't like an immediate walkout where they're just like, well, I don't know anything that's going on.
Well, I think they definitely have to, because it seems like there's been a good stretch of time in between each of these movies. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're necessarily breaking their legs to make the next installment immediately. Part of it is because they physically can't, because of all the computer and CGI and special effects they have to put in it to make the apes look as good as they do. But on the other hand, it seems as if though Fox, this is obviously a property that Fox has. It has the license to use this property. So it's not as if they're paying somebody else for this property. They own it outright. They can do whatever the fuck they want with it. So they're dusting it off and rehashing it because it's a familiar IP. But they're doing it in a interesting enough way to make folks look into it again. Yes, the Planet of the Apes films were very popular, but they were very popular for a specific reason. They had Charlton Heston in them. It was brand new makeup effects at the time. It was something that no one had seen before. And even though it stretched over the course of 5 films and the whole thing of the late 60s, early 70s of Ape Mania, you can't do that the same way if you were to do it again today. So they have.
One of the things that I am a little bummed out is the fact that Planet of the Apes was essentially the first franchise in the United States as far as like marketing toys and all that kind of stuff. Granted, Star Wars was the big franchise that like streamlined it, but I'm like really bummed out that there's not a lot of Planet of the Apes merch right now.
I think Fox is definitely playing it safe. I think they all these films, it looks like they're going to be PG-13 films. I don't know for sure what rating the third film has, but this film was PG-13, and I'm pretty sure the last film was PG-13. And so they're definitely casting a wide enough net not to alienate children, if not at least teenagers, from seeing it. But the point that I was making up before is that I think that they know going into it that, yes, this is a recognizable IP, but it's not so recognizable in that if we can't do it the same way that we did it back in the 60s with the first film, because we already fucking tried to do that with the Tim Burton movie, and that was a fucking bomb. So
now, I will say that the special effects makeup in that movie was pretty outstanding.
No, I agree. Rick Baker and his team did a very good job with the look of that film. It was everything else that was the problem with that film, including casting fucking Mark Wahlberg as your lead.
Never a good idea.
It's
like,
never a good
literally
idea.
Ever.
Marky
except if you're Boogie Nights
deserves to be stuck back in the Funky Bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they went into this at least an idea of a franchise being, okay, we'll make one film. We'll see how this goes. We'd love to have a franchise because we all love making fucking money. But obviously, we can't dump a lot of cash into this, because if it blows up in our face, then we're out a bunch of fucking money. And there was enough good stuff in that first film to warrant a second film. But it seems as though Fox is, I would say, probably being very careful with what it does, and at least giving things, because it definitely, with all of the sort of everything like a 10-pound sausage in a 5-pound casing that first film was, the second film doesn't feel that way. And maybe that is because it feels more like the writers and directors, there's more trust being given to them, versus producers hounding them with notes of, well, this has to change, then this has to change. Kind of how the difference of Batman Begins felt different than The Dark Knight.
Well, supposedly that's also why the lab stuff was so bad in the first movie, was apparently producers stepped in and were like, hey, you have to rewrite all this stuff in the lab. It's too much. People aren't going to understand it. You have to dumb it down.
Right. So it seems like Fox is at least going forward with this trilogy in a way that seems much more smarter. At least I'm assuming it's a trilogy. I hope it's a trilogy, because I wouldn't want, although I would love to keep watching Ape films, I think that this is a film series that deserves just to be a trilogy. I think if they were to keep making film after film after film, it would get very tiresome, and where the fuck do you go eventually? You go right up until the Charlton Heston film, and it's like they're watching the space shuttle crash on the planet, and that's where you stop.
Well, even if you did that, that would be fine. You would have so much time to get there, because right now, not only are they generations away from that, they're also literally completely across the country.
Right. About this franchise and everything and how they're going about doing it. I think they're definitely playing it safe. I mean, and to be honest, I don't know how many fingers and how many pies Fox as a film company has. It has their hopeful Ridley Scott Alien prequel trilogy that is kind of getting mixed reception on. Prometheus was very, very mixed. This Alien Covenant film, I've seen it twice, but still it's gotten very, very mixed feelings. And apparently there's going to be a third film that is going to be even more of a prequel to the original Alien film than this current film was. And aside from that, I really don't know of any other major things that Fox has going on.
X-Men.
Oh, that's right. Fuck
Deadpool.
They have X-Men. They have Deadpool. That's right. I totally forgot about them.
Logan, even though he's part of the X-Men, that was a Fox film as well.
Yeah,
I think Fox is doing a lot better than Sony.
I will perfectly agree. I think they definitely, when they had the X-Men property, they were milking that for all it was worth. But then I think it really got to a point where they were like, okay, hold up. We keep pulling on these udders and milk comes out, but we keep doing it an awful lot. If we do it too much, the cow's going to start shooting blood. We need to figure out a different way. And then they do X-Men First Class. And that's a neat twist on stuff. It's a little confusing because I'm sure for their audience base, it's like, is this like a reboot? Is it a whatnot? And then they kind of solve that with Days of Future Past a bit. And so now they're going to make a third X-Men First Class Universe film. That's going to happen. And that apparently is... Okay. Casey, do you want me to spoil apparently what the plot for the third X-Men film is going to be?
Okay, yeah, sure.
They're going to tell the Dark Phoenix story.
Well, yeah, we knew that.
Okay, fine.
And by we, I mean literally all of America.
Okay, fine. You fucking know that. They're going to basically retread what they did with the third film, but apparently do it better. And they're going to make another Deadpool film. And they've kind of worked it out very well, where it's just like, X-Men, that's our PG-13 teenage comic book fandom audience. And we love those guys, and we know those guys will come out to see these movies. And then we got Deadpool, who's sort of in the same universe, but he's R-rated. He's for the adults, and he's a little bit more edgier. And it's like, okay, I like this. I think the only... Okay, now refresh my memory. Is it Sony or Fox that owns the rights to Fantastic Four?
I think it's Fox.
I couldn't remember. If it's Fox, then that seems to be the one property that they have where they're just like, I'm stymied. I don't know what to fucking do with this. We've done something with it twice already, or 3 times already.
What year did that come out?
The newest one?
Fan Four
Stick.
That, I want to say 2 years ago? Off the top of my head, that would be what I would think in 2015. But yeah, Fox is doing a hell of a lot fucking better than Sony. Sony wants a hit like a crackhead needs a hit. It is desperate for a hit. And like Warner Brothers is desperate for a hit that is not just a hit, but a hit that's sustainable.
Yeah, and now they're like, hey, let's go for a Venom movie. What's an actor that everybody likes right now? Oh yeah, let's get Tom Hardy as Venom. Let's make it R because that worked for Deadpool, right?
Here's the thing. Really fucking good, but part of me is like, oh, you fucks. I hope you don't fuck this up. Because I would love to see Tom Hardy as fucking Eddie Brock in Venom. And also, that kind of rides the line of, now wait a minute, does Disney have anything to do with this movie? Or do they not? Or is it only a Spider-Man?
There's sort of a weird joint deal that they have because technically speaking, Tom Holland is serving for both studios right now.
Right.
Amy Pascal made some kind of agreement.
We were kind enough to let them use him for a couple movies.
Right.
Because we fucked it up for 2 movies, so...
Right. And I couldn't remember when they announced Venom. I kind of went, yay, because, oh, great, he'll be part of the Marvel Universe. And then I went, oh, fuck, wait, how is this going to work out with the weird fucking deal that Sony and Disney has? Do they only share Spider-Man? Do they share everything with Spider-Man?
It's only Spider-Man. The Venom movies are basically trying to trick you into thinking, oh, look, it's a new Marvel movie when it's not.
Right, because I know that their sort of deal, at least from what I remember, was Disney makes the picture, Sony gets to release it as a Sony film, and we split the profits down the line, and that's how we're doing it. And
Disney's going to find some way to screw Sony over, though.
Oh, I have no doubt. Because
but then they'll actually deserve it this time.
Well, yeah, because Disney's a conglomerate now. It learned its lesson the hard way in the 70s and the 80s when it was trying to do everything based upon its own properties, and they were slowly bleeding themselves dry.
Disney's been fucking people over since Oob Iwerk, so yeah.
Well, true, but in the way of buying up properties, that came with Michael Eisner being like, no, you have to diversify. You can't
those fucking Eisners.
You can't just be in the one thing, which, to a point, yes, he's incredibly correct. If you're stuck doing one thing, you're stuck in even if you do that one thing very, very well, you're only doing that one thing. And if everyone has experienced that one thing already, well, they're not going to really be interested anymore. And so they diversified, and it's made them a much more interesting company because in some cases, like with the Marvel films, it seems like they're more or less all right being like, yeah, you go, guys, go do your fucking creative thing. That's no problem. We'll just keep counting the money. And unless it's too crazy, we'll let you know. But on the other hand, I keep hearing things with Disney being like, telling directors like, okay, you got to put this in. you got to put this in, you got to put this in, and that's why Edgar Wright walked off of Ant-Man. That's like, great. We could have had an Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie, but we didn't. But instead we get Baby Driver, and I'm looking forward to Baby Driver.
I've heard it's good, but I haven't seen it myself.
I got a friend that saw an early pre-screening of it, but fortunately we get an early pre-screening of War of the Planet of the Apes, and that's been a movie that I've been looking forward to ever since this movie that we're talking about right now.
You guys have seen War of the Planet of the Apes already?
No, it's tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow. So you guys get to see
No, it's Monday.
Okay, that makes sense because I have a friend in Atlanta who is going to be seeing it on Monday. And I was like, wait a minute, did it come out already? She's like, no, I get to see a pre-screening on Monday because that's how cool I am. I'm like, oh, you fucking suck.
She's not the only cool one, clearly.
Yeah. Well, listen, you guys would be a lot fucking cooler if you took me with you, but I know that's not how this rolls, so I'll be here on Father's Day.
If there was a third ticket, you would be there.
Of course, I know. I'll walk on my knees, pretend to be your child. Like, why is an awfully large baby you have there, madam? How dare you talk about my son that way? Okay, this got weird. So
I could sit on your shoulder so we could wear a trench coat and pretend to be one person.
No, you're gonna like strap yourself to my chest, and I'm gonna go as Ren's morbidly obese trench coat wearing friend. And then when we find a secure place, I'm gonna unhinge you from myself, and that's how you get in for free.
That makes more sense than you walking on your knees the whole time.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. It's like, sir, did your gut just move? It's like, I have a weight problem. Thank you very much. And you are body shaming me right now. I thought this was a safe space. Clearly, it is not. I want apes having wars with human beings, not to be judged.
You're here.
So, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It's a really good movie. The apes are given a lot of stuff to do, as they should. The human characters are barely given anything to do, and that would be maybe okay if you had better actors in the human character roles to at least give their tiny little shit morsels in the script some gravitas. Mm-hmm. But we don't get that. We're just sort of left going, I wish we can get back to the ape scenes. Yay, the apes are back. Let's enjoy this for a while more until we have to go back to the crummy, boring human scenes. I'm being really rough on the human actors. They're not horrible. They're just not great. They're not as good compared to what they have to work with.
Well, a big part of it, too, is that there's just nothing emotional between the humans and the apes. Like in the first movie, you have a lot of the stuff with Caesar and John Lithgow. That was really emotional, and that's what really sets the foundation of man versus ape in a really tragic, but we just love each other and have an understanding sort of a way. And the movie gets very emotional with the ape stuff, but none of the stuff where Caesar is telling poor man's John Carter, "You are good man." You know, it's not. It's okay, but not really good.
Right.
I don't really believe it, you know?
It's almost funny because I almost wanted to see Gary Oldman as the lead and have somebody else play the human heavy, because it would have felt like, oh, you would have given Gary Oldman more to work with, and maybe he would have been more interesting versus just phoning in a role in this movie. Which he does have a good emotional scene, but then again, the pictures of those two children are his two sons, so it's kind of an easy cop-out to be like, I can be emotional and imagine these two children of mine are dead. It's like, okay, that's not that big of a stretch for acting. Okay, then, well, I guess we're going to keep doing this, Gary. It's funny because apparently in the original ending of the film, which was shot, the military was going to show up in a big battle fleet and chase the apes back to the forest.
But they decided to push that off for the next movie?
They test screened it, and this audiences were kind of, So Matt Reeves actually went back in and was like, this actually doesn't make any sense now that I look at it, because if they're going to face a threat, it doesn't make sense for them to face this unknown threat that's suddenly come in from out of nowhere, when their threat should either be themselves with Koba, or with the humans that they're dealing with right now. And they reshot a new ending, and that's the ending that you see in the movie.
And that makes a lot more sense, too.
It does. It puts a nice, where it's just like, this all happened here. We didn't have to go.
I still would have liked to see that ending in some capacity, though.
That's the fanboy in you crying out. But
yeah, it is. But no, I mean, like in a deleted scene or something.
Fanboy
like
that fanboy wants to eat candy all the time. He's like, no. I'm gonna get you a salad. We need to get some cream in you. We're gonna get something healthy in you. You'll get plenty of candy later. Right now, we get some healthy storytelling going on. It'll keep you regular. But yeah, Casey, in a nutshell, it's not spoiling anything, because I'm sure you're gonna see this on fucking posters already. That little bit. Okay.
Nope.
And apparently, we get a cameo from James Franco in this movie. No, not the third film. I'm talking about the film we're talking about right now.
Okay, good. I'm like, dude, 3 movies with James Franco when he's not even in the movie.
Let's play a little bit of what I call cinema detective right now. Did James Franco make it out alive out of this movie? Yes or no? No, he's dead.
But he still made a cameo.
The X is on the door, and his Jeep from the first movie is parked outside his house covered in vines.
No, I know, but he still made a cameo even though he's dead.
Yeah, but in other words, he dead. He ain't coming back for a third film.
Yeah, but clearly being dead hasn't stopped him so far.
Let's put it this way. If they pull the same bullshit that they did in this movie, it's going to be a lot of groaning in the audience going, oh, come on!
Well, I will say that I don't think Koba is dead, and that's because if you watch as he falls, he doesn't necessarily go for a straight fall. He actually does fall onto a platform, which he could have jumped from.
Did you guys wait till the end credits?
Yeah.
Did you hear the grunting and the heavy breathing and the sound of debris being moved? Apparently that, from what the IMDb Gazette told me, that's an indication that maybe Koba is actually alive. Maybe.
I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to that with that context now.
You hear rubble moving and you hear something. I don't necessarily would call it Koba's heavy breathing, but the IMDb review was like, oh, no, that's in there. And that means he might be back. It's like, okay.
Wait, we're not supposed to think that that's what it was?
If it was, they don't do a good enough job with it, is what I'm saying. If those are the dots you're supposed to connect the lines to, it's like you're kind of stretching it a bit because you don't make a good enough job here with what you're doing. But yeah, apparently what I was going to say before is like, apparently James Franco didn't know he was in the fucking sequel.
Oh, they just used the footage from the first movie?
They pulled a Crispin Glover Back to the Future too. They illegally used his image and footage of him from the first film. And in an interview for something else, the interviewer said, like, so you're in the second film? And he was like, wait, what? I'm in the second film? I didn't even know about this. It must... Really?
Is it really that illegal? Like, don't they own the footage of him acting for the first movie?
They have to get his actor's permission to use their likeness and image. And that was actually
especially without pay, I guess.
Yeah, that was a groundbreaking case that actually Crispin Glover, based on what happened to him in Back to the Future 2, that he sued the film company for, because it's like, he didn't come back to do it, and they're like, fine, we'll just use it without. He's like, no, you can't, that's my fucking face. It's like, we don't give a fuck.
Did they use like a face mold of Crispin Glover?
Yes, they did. To use as prosthetics on another actor, and they used footage they didn't use from the first film in alternate takes in the second film, and he took them to court saying, that's my face. It's not like I'm in makeup, or you can't tell who the hell I am. That is me. I might be playing a character, but that's me. And I wasn't asked, and I didn't give my consent, and I wasn't compensated for this. And the court agreed that, yeah, you're absolutely right. You should have been asked, and you should have been compensated if you wanted to. We agree in your favor. So because of that, if there's ever a movie that uses an actor's image without their consent, they have the right to sue the company.
So what's this deal with like this post-mortem thing? Like, with Carrie Fisher. Well, she was alive at the time, but you had what is it? Peter Cushing.
That's actually something that's coming up more and more with the way more and more celebrities are celebrities of note are dying. For instance, Robin Williams stipulated in his will in so many words that within a certain period of time, which I think was maybe 10, maybe 15 years, I might be getting the number of years wrong, he does not want his image used in any way, shape, or form in any sort of media post-mortem. Basically being like, you guys have this whole chunk of time, we're not going to fucking dick around with my face or my voice in anything. And after that, my estate can figure it out, but I'm telling you right now, you have this chunk of time where you can't touch me. For Peter Cushing, it was Peter Cushing's estate that they went to, and they agreed that, yeah, we're fine with you doing that. And I don't know if any family members make up his estate or if it's a trust that other people are in charge of, but they got permission from his estate. And for some fans, they were like, oh, that's gross. And other people were like, what the fuck do you want? They went to his fucking estate. As far as legality goes, they're the people that can legally make that decision, yes or no, if they want to do this. For Carrie Fisher, I don't know if she stipulated in her will at all that she didn't want to be used. I think maybe it was an issue of the filmmakers wanting to pay respect to her as an actor and going, yes, her character was important in the new film trilogy. However, due to respect for her and the work that she's done and the person that she was, we are not going to digitally replace her in the film. And it's something that a lot of celebrities, the older that they get, or certain celebrities with certain conditions, are really starting to take a harder look at and stipulate in their wills. Like, for instance, Marilyn Monroe, it's some company that owns her likeness. It's not her family.
I think it's Universal Studios, because I remember when I was at Universal Studios, I met Marilyn Monroe impersonator there, and that was at the studio. That wasn't like outside.
In a case like that, it might be it might be some sort of company that represents them that is allowing Universal Studios to have access to the image. But within a certain amount of time, the rights reverse back, and then the company, because I believe it's the same company that also owns the rights to James Dean's image, and I think Elvis Presley's image. And it's a powerhouse company that sort of tent poles all three. But there's other people like Michael Jackson. He died, and he didn't have anything stipulated in his will stating, whether or not his likeness could be used or not in certain ways. Because obviously, when he died, sort of the technology for that wasn't really something big and popular. But apparently, there have been talks of him popping up either on a tour as a hologram, or in
South Park did it,
or in rides someplace doing stuff.
Wasn't the first time that was done with Tupac Shakur?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. And that's another thing, because that would be something I would want to ask is, okay, when you guys did that, who did you have to go through in order to do that? Because that's a person. That's not a character. That's not someone in makeup. That's Tupac. So did you go through his family? Did you go through his estate? Did you have to go through anybody? Yeah, because that's the big question. Who owns the rights to you when you're dead? Is it your family? Is it the company that made money off of you? If you don't have something stating everything out legally in black and white, it tends to wind up being very murky and muddy as to what we can and what we can't do. Like, we might not be able to have you be in films, but we can have you be in commercials. We can't have you in commercials, but we can have you maybe do something on TV. Or maybe we can't do anything in America, but we can do something overseas in Japan. Or maybe we can't do anything in film or television or commercial work, can do something in a ride at an amusement park. So it turns into a really gray area sometimes. And I think the more better technology is coming along, a lot of people are having to look at what sort of legacy they want to leave behind and honestly go, what do I want to do? because I think for some people, especially if they're celebrities of note with families, they want to leave something behind for them, or at least make sure that they're taken care of somehow. And if this is an option, I think some might want it. But on the other hand, it's going to be like, well, what if your corpse is in a commercial basically selling butter to people? Is that the memory you want to leave behind? For some folks, it might be fine because it's like, at least my family is still being provided for, even if I can't do it for them. In a way, I'm doing it for them, but I'm not alive doing it. Very, very interesting. But no, Carrie Fisher's not going to appear as a CGI Muppet in the third Star Wars film. They have already publicly stated, out of respect for her, that that is not going to be happening. Oh, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, we keep straying from you. But yeah, Dawn is good. It's a nice middle movie, like the original Star Wars trilogy. It's its own movie. You can pluck it out from the middle and still enjoy it on its own merits. And it has a beginning, middle, and end. And you can't say that with a lot of these films that are in a fucking franchise where it's just like, what happened in the last one? Do I need to see it? How much of it do I need to see? Okay, I
And
guess
then you get like franchises that are like 8 movies in, and then it's like, oh fuck, do I have to watch these 8 movies again?
Yeah, because then it turns it basically into TV. It's like I have to watch how many episodes of Lost in order to be caught up. I have to sit through how many episodes of the X-Files in order to understand everything. It's one thing if it's TV. It's something totally different if you're paying $10, $15 a movie ticket to see how many of these goddamn movies in the theater versus $2, $3, $4, $5 sitting at home watching it for rent. And
many of them vary in quality and types of film. So like you're required to watch all of them, but like not all of them are necessarily your cup of tea. I like the Captain America movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's pretty much it for me.
Guardians.
Well, yeah, that's. But until the Guardians show up in any of the Avengers movies, I'm considering them separate properties right now. Yes, I know there's the whole thing with like Thanos and stuff like that, but
oh god, fucking damn it! Why don't you give me a kiss, Thanos? I like people giving me a kiss when they're pulling my dick so hard. Good God!
Hey, how many movies are we gonna get where he's sitting in a chair?
Thanos has made me come over how many films so far? How many fucking films has he either been in or he's been mentioned in?
I think it's 5 or 6.
Good Christ. I think you have a whole, legion of fanboys and fangirls getting blue balls and blue ovaries over fucking Thanos. Just like, when is it gonna show up?
Dude, girls get blue balls too. We just get them on the inside.
That's why I said blue ovaries.
I know, but it's funnier if you say balls.
Yes, but I'm trying to include everybody here, Casey. This is a safe space, like I mentioned before. I'm not here to be judged. I'm here to be loved and accepted. Why can't you do that? Now the room's gone quiet.
So I did want to say that a lot of people gave Andy Serkis a lot of credit for this film for his acting, and his acting is fantastic. I also think that you have to include a lot of the CGI work that went in. I know that there was a little bit of a bout between the CGI renderers and Andy Serkis as far as like what actually counts as performance, but it's definitely there.
I agree.
Was really blown away by in this movie was Toby Kebbell as Koba. The fact that he really emulated 8 movements and it wasn't like a more humanist portrayal, I thought was really interesting. Like, he's clearly less advanced than Caesar, and I really liked how he presented his performance in the film.
I did too. These are all folks that apparently have worked with Andy Serkis at the Imaginarium, which is the workshop he has set up specifically for actors to do, motion capture, physical acting like this. And I just fucking say this. Andy Serkis does a very subdued performance as Caesar. It's good, but the actor who plays Koba fucking knocks it out of the park. It's just like, I want to fucking look at Koba and what the fuck he does. There's bits of acting that go well hand in hand, both with the CGI and with the physical acting, with Koba as a character that are done so well. Like when he first gets spotted in the armory by the guards, and he turns around and the got a gun on him, and he's trying to size them up, and you can see that in his head he's doing the mental math. It's like, they both have guns. I have 2 cronies with me, but they don't know what's going on. If I do anything stupid, they're gonna kill me. And then he has that moment where he takes a deep breath and closes his eyes, almost like he's going to change into another character of the goofy chimpanzee who doesn't know any better, and that's what he plays it off as. But almost like he's taking a deep breath and closing his eyes and going, I don't fucking believe I have to degrade myself to this. All right. And then he starts behaving like a goofy chimpanzee. And then they think, oh, look, stupid monkey. Go, get the fuck out of here, monkey. And he's like, eh. And then he has that beat. As soon as he's away from them, his face drops. It's like, and it's a great bit of acting, and it's a great bit of marrying both what the actor did and using CGI to back it up to make it all play out, because there's subtlety there. And if you didn't have the actors physically there in their motion capture suits to be able to play off the actors that way, and if you didn't have as good of motion capture actors to be the apes, and if you didn't have as good as CGI artists, which, let's be fair, in some scenes, CGI doesn't look all that great. In other scenes, it looks very good. You wouldn't have had as good of a movie as that was, with as good of characters. One of the best scenes is like basically Caesar going, "They're going to do where are the humans? They're doing human work," and he's like, "Yeah." He's pointing to his scars. Human work. To his face, human work. It's a very emotional scene. It's like, I know what humans do. I know what human work is. And Caesar's just like, okay, you got to stop.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about this film is there are opposing sides, but nobody exactly is on like a moral tier. Like, they're both all wrong and they're both all right at the same time.
It's almost like Caesar and Koba are 2 sides of the same coin, of Caesar being a very practical and pragmatic thinking side, and Koba being a very emotional and violent and a very emotional side. It's like everything is knee-jerk with him. It doesn't matter if it's at the cost of other members of his own kind. It doesn't matter if it's at the cost of even him getting hurt. It's all emotion with him. It's all rage. It's all anger. And Caesar, almost to his detriment, is all practical. It's like, no. We're going to think this out. We're going to make a plan. If we don't do this, then this will happen. But if we do this, this will happen. And in the end, Caesar basically says, yeah, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have done it because now we're in this situation. And he makes a good point in the movie when Koba challenges him, going like, we should go down there and kill them now when they're weak. And then Caesar shoots back with, and how many apes are going to have to die for that to happen? And Koba doesn't have an answer. And they both bring up good points, but at the same time, it's like, these are hard questions and hard decisions to make, and no one really has the best answer or solution until everything plays out one way. And then it's only in hindsight that they can go, okay, this is what we should have done different.
I love that moment at the end where Caesar has that interaction with Malcolm, and Malcolm still believes that there's some way to create a median, and Caesar just knows that it's only going to get worse from here.
Right. Caesar has seen the future because he knows how bad human beings can be, because he knows how bad the apes can be. And he understands that the apes can really, at times, can really be no different than the human beings they're against. So what more could he expect? And it's almost sort of a begrudging and sad acceptance of, I know what this means. And sort of, it's like the heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's like, I know what this means. I know what's going to happen next. It's not happening yet, but it's just around the corner. You know, the humans are going to, basically, we're going to chase them out of here. But I already know that they got in touch with a military base, and we can maybe take out a bunch of surviving humans that came across an ammo depot. Well, what's it going to be like when we have to come against soldiers? That's a different animal. And what's going to happen next? And the thing is this is actually a clever way to do a sequel, a prequel, I should say, because they've already made it very clear these films are prequels to the Charlton Heston films. So we know the Charlton Heston films are going to be happening. We just don't know what's going to happen with this group of apes. And because of that, if you think about it that way, there are some stakes versus with other prequels where oftentimes there really aren't any stakes because things have to happen in a certain way to certain characters at a certain time, because if they don't, then because of the way we've already set things up, it's not going to make any sense to fit in with the whole prequel history.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I would be okay if this franchise continued. Part of me, like, I know a little bit of a fanboy going on here, but I think this is good for Caesar's trilogy. But you could expand afterwards, you know, like after this whole thing with Caesar, and talk about
you think about them going further and doing a whole remake of Planet of the Apes?
To be perfectly honest with you, if they do it right, I'm okay with it.
Okay, I can see that.
Especially since the films, as far as their logistics and some of the stuff that happens later on in the film series, I think they could retroactively fix some of those problems, like blowing up the world, but then they somehow were able to make a time machine to go back in time and like all that kind of stuff. Like that is kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, that's
obviously Fox wanting to keep having a franchise going and keep making printing money. It's like, I get that, but let's look at it logically. Probably not going to get that if this series continues after a trilogy. It would be interesting, because I was actually thinking about that the other day when Casey was telling me about this, and then seeing the trailer for the next film, and then hearing some blurbs here and there about what potentially may or may not happen in the third film. It got me to thinking of, what if they just keep going? And what if they make a remake of Planet of the Apes? What would that be like? How would they do it? And you wouldn't be able to do a twist ending because it wouldn't fit with what they've been doing already, which is there's no twist endings. And that's good because it needs to be different. It can't always be a Rod Serling twist at the very end, because although he had a hand in writing that script, a lot of what he had to write got rewritten. But that ending is definitely for fuck sure his. And that's the thing that the fucking Tim Burton movie got wrong, where it's just like, no. You can't. So much of what your movie has not followed that first film, which is good. At least it's being something different. But the fact that you're ending it the same way on a twist, that's not, no, you can't do that, because that has to be different too. It has to go someplace else, because we've already seen this before. It's not going to surprise us again. It would be really interesting to see what the ape culture would look like further into the future. In this particular trilogy of films, it's one of the few cases, and I don't know how you guys feel, where a studio has taken a beloved film and film IP and rebooted it in such a way that on its own merit, it may not be as good as the original, but it's good in its own interesting way, and it's not just simply trash.
I immediately have to disagree with you saying, no, it's not as good as the original.
You feel it is as good as...
Shush. They're both, I mean, like, yeah, like you said, they're good in different ways, which is awesome. But, I mean, to say that, the reboots aren't as good as the original films is a little ridiculous.
So your argument is, no, they're not as good as the original.
No, my argument is they're at least as good as the originals.
Oh, okay, gotcha, okay. But using this as an example, can you guys, think of any other reboot or remake that has gone on recently that has the same sort of like upper tier caliber that the Apes films have had.
Literally only one.
What's that?
That's Fury Road.
Good. I agree with that.
But I mean, other than that, I can't think of a sequel slash prequel slash reboot slash soft reboot. That's, I mean, I think Star Trek, but Star Trek to a much lesser extent.
I agree. Those films have now basically turned into extended episodes.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's one where it's like, it's not as good as the original, but you're trying to take it in interesting ways, and that's better than being boring.
Well, it would be nice to take it in interesting ways if every goddamn film they did so far wasn't a villain looking for revenge against the Federation or a character in the Federation.
That's very true. I mean, we don't need 3 of these movies that are all the same.
It's basically them remaking Wrath of Khan 3 times.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the second film was literally them remaking Wrath of Khan, which J.J. Abrams was like, okay, the second movie is not going to be Wrath of Khan. No, it's not going to be Wrath of Khan. It's totally not going to be Wrath of Khan. Oh.
And they did the Khan, and it's just like, dude.
Like, oh, J.J., you're a fucking liar. You lie to your children at night because you lied to me. Don't tell me this plate of shit is macaroni because I'm not going to eat it, J.J. I'm not going to eat this plate of shit. I don't care how many times you tell me it's macaroni. Yeah, I think if you had to look at another film remake, reboot, reimagining that is as successful as the original, if not surpassed it, you'd have to go back quite a bit, maybe all the way back to the 80s to something like John Carpenter's The Thing or Cronenberg's
or The Fly. Yeah, exactly. And now they're trying to do reboots of those reboots, and it's just like, nah.
I mean, even some of the sequel stuff they didn't work. Where it's just like, oh, The Fly 2. No, I'm not. I didn't like it. It is what it is, but still not crazy about it.
Well, there is such a thing as a good reboot, but I don't know. Is there such a thing as a good reboot of a good reboot?
Planet of the Apes.
What? No, because that's a prequel to an original franchise.
Okay, yeah.
You can't really include the Tim Burton thing in there.
Exactly, my man.
Because it's its own animal, really. It's trying to do 2 things at the same time, which is to be its own thing, which is a Tim Burton blockbuster film, and to try to be like the first movie that everyone knows and love, and it can't serve 2 masters. Not well, at least. And it's very clear it can't serve 2 masters in that movie because of how poorly it did.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen comedian Dana Gould dressed as Dr. Zaius, dressed as Mark Twain, doing an evening of Mark Twain as Dr. Zaius?
That sounds hysterical.
It's sort of like what you would get back in the day with the actor Hal Holbrook dressed up as Mark Twain, doing an evening with Mark Twain. But in this case, it's like, what if Dr. Zaius was really an actor who acted in the movie Planet of the Apes? And in this case, he's playing the role of Mark Twain in a stage production of An Evening with Mark Twain. And he's got the white suit, and he's got the glasses, and he's got the cigar, and it's fucking hysterical. Actually, when they re-released Planet of the Apes for a limited time through Turner Classic Movies in theaters, I think for its anniversary, which happened if not this year, then last year, they had Dana Gould on, who's a huge Planet of the Apes fan, talking with the host as Dr. Zaius.
Yeah, I saw like little clips of that. I definitely wanted to go, but I was just too swamped at the time.
I totally spaced out on the date it was going to be released, but he was giving facts about the original movie as if he was an actor who had been on the set and was just like, oh, Charlton Heston was a dear man. All the ape actors had to arrive 6 hours early in order to get together in their makeup, and they barely went home to sleep. So what Heston did, such a lovely man, he had all of the ape actors brought to set out on location in his personal helicopter, and he paid for it himself. Oh, charming fellow. I, was good friends with Susan Plachette. She raises horses now. I don't know what she does these days. And it's hysterical. It's just him going on about the movie and just, Rodney McDowell was a love. He was a gentle man. And, and yeah, this is fucking hysterical.
That sounds adorable.
And he's in full ape makeup. They got the guys from K&BFX, who he's good friends with. Just like, can you guys do me as Dr. Zayas? And they're like, yeah, I think we could do that. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. Yeah, if they continue doing these movies, I sure to fuck hope that they don't do mutants in any films. I think that's a card they can't play again. And even if they do keep doing films after a third film, I wonder if the novelty will have worn off by then. If it's just like, all right, well, unless you really did something groundbreaking in this third film.
Wait. How many Marvel superheroes do we have every year? And DC movies do we have every year? And Star Wars movies do we have every year?
This is true. However, here's the difference. With the Marvel stuff and the Star Wars stuff, they've at least tried to take audiences along with different groups of characters.
But you could do that with Planet of the Apes. You can there are tons of different apes you could follow, or humans, or it would be really interesting to see how the humans lost their voice.
Well, I think if they did do a fourth film, in order to make it interesting and change it up for the audience, they would probably have to jump farther into the future in order to show where ape society is in several generations, versus continuing to doing what we're doing now, which is basically The Walking Dead but with apes, which I think after 3 films is going to make people go, okay, I've kind of seen this already. This is kind of the reason why I lost interest in The Walking Dead, then kind of wandered back into it, then kind of wandered away from it again.
I got so fed up with The Walking Dead. Like, after seeing the actor who played Negan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I think his performance is absolutely horrendous. And everybody's like, oh, this performance is so great. And then I'm like, fuck, now he's going to be in this for a really long time, even though he's way too showy. And while I get that's the character, I personally would have rather had Kevin Durand play him. He can't act, like, at least not to my taste. I didn't like him as the comedian in Watchmen.
I was going to say, but Ren, he was the comedian, and everyone loves Watchmen.
I think that one of the best performances he ever did was actually on Grey's Anatomy.
As the ghost?
Yes, as the cancer ghost that gets fucked sexually. That was like the only time I actually liked him as an actor.
He gets fucked as a ghost?
Yeah, because his girlfriend...
I was hung up on her saying fuck sexually. Because
No, because that's what it is. His girlfriend / fiance / crazy ass bitch is so insane from cancer in her brain that she is cheating on her alive boyfriend with the ghost of her dead fiance.
Oh, so this is all in her head that I'm seeing a ghost.
No. She's fucking him. You hear it.
No, but I'm saying is the cancers caused her to hallucinate that she's seeing a ghost when really she's not, and she's imagining she's fucking a ghost when really she's not.
I mean, it is one of those things where, like, you hear it. She's doing something in there.
You hear him as well, or just her?
No, it's all in her head, but it's still kind of hysterical.
Exactly.
No, it is, but it's still pretty hysterical.
It just sounds very bleak and sad. My cancer riddled body is fucking a ghost. It's like, oh, sweetie, no.
Not even fucking a ghost. Cheating on your boyfriend with a ghost. You can go fucking a live person right now, but you don't because you're insane.
Fiancé.
Yeah,
you're not the comedian.
Because as we all know from reading Watchmen, women just love being fucked by the comedian.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ, I hated that goddamn movie. And that movie gets so much fucking...
Hey, wait. I said reading the comic.
I know. I hated that fucking movie, though. I love the comic.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the few
That's
books
the
I
correct
pulled
answer.
Yeah, it's one of the few books I pulled out of storage that I have on my shelf here. But that movie gets so much fucking praise from Zack Snyder, from certain fans who will badmouth all the other things he does. It's like, Watchmen was pretty cool. And I'm like, fuck you. you're probably the same bunch of idiots who think Sucker Punch was a powerful feminist movie that makes me just want to cut your dick off because.
Wait, you mean Zack Snyder and his wife, Deborah Snyder?
Yeah, who are like, she's like the only woman on that like roster of people who were in charge of making that movie. It's like, all right, let's see, producer, no, producer, no, producer, no. Snyder's the last name. That's his wife. Director, no. Writer, no. Producer, co-producer. Like, okay, it's all fucking men except for one woman, and guess what? It's his wife. I'm not surprised.
For a while, I seriously thought that it was like his imaginary wife. Because I was like, how can any woman actually want to work with Zack Snyder?
Or is it until you saw a picture of them together, or until you heard about his daughter committing suicide?
No, it was earlier than that.
Okay, it makes you
also,
go, oh,
their daughter. Their
daughter. Makes
Mhm.
so it made you go, oh, I guess he has a wife.
Well, yeah, I saw a picture of them together, like I think about 1.5 years ago or something.
Like, I guess that's not his cousin.
Well, I thought about that. I was like, is that like an escort or something? Just to be like, no, you guys, my wife is real.
Are they distant cousins, like Daisy Duke and the Duke boys?
Oh, yeah, what if her maiden name was Snyder?
Do they ride the General Lee together?
I always was curious because, I understand how franchises like to reboot and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I really would like to see the Planet of the Apes series talk about some of these socially relevant issues now, because
You mean you want to have that one hippie ape like in the Charlton Heston movie that's always grown-ups, man. They ruin everything. It's like, keep flying high, those flags.
Well, given the fact that race and everything have sort of blown up in the past couple of years, and racial politics and all that kind of stuff, I think one of the things that I love about sci-fi is it challenges current social and political issues in a way that is somewhat removed for people to like really dig deep, and not as harsh as horror, which does the same thing.
No, I agree. Horror can be a very good tool for examination of that, but sometimes it's a very blunt and crude tool, but still it can be an effective tool. The thing with science fiction is that straight up science fiction can often be very dry unless it's done very well. It usually has to be science fiction cut with something else, like horror or adventure or fantasy, drama, fill in the blank, almost like you're mixing a cocktail and you have to cut a potent liqueur with something else. Unless it's really well done, it can often sometimes be just too fucking technical, and it's just like, okay, I can't absorb or be entertained by this because this is like reading stereo instructions. But I will agree that sci-fi, when done well, can wind up telling very wonderful allegories for things that on the surface can be one thing, but then if you look at it in a different way, it can be something very different. And if you read it enough, like any good story, you can see many different sides to it. Like, I'm going through The Time Machine right now again. It's been a while since I went through the original text with H.G. Wells. Yeah, because he's here right with me. The ghost of H.G. Wells is over my fucking shoulder, hitting on women around me, and I'm having to tell him, knock it the fuck off. I'm trying to live my life here. But
is he talking about Jack the Ripper at all?
No, not fucking yet. Good Christ. Have you guys, side note, have you guys seen the ads for that, Time After Time, the TV series?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that turd was dead, but it's back, and it smells just as horrible.
Hey, I like the original film.
Yeah, of course you would.
Dude, Malcolm McDowell is awesome.
Okay, Malcolm McDowell is awesome, but Malcolm McDowell has been in shit.
Malcolm McDowell is like salt. You can put it in a lot of dishes, but it doesn't mean you should use it.
No. Wait. No. You're done. He can be in bad things, but Malcolm McDowell is not bad. Ever. No, there's no such thing as too much Malcolm McDowell. That's just wrong.
Even the Halloween Rob Zombie film, Malcolm McDowell.
Oh shit! I forgot he was in that. I haven't seen that.
That's like unscrewing the top of the salt shaker and dumping it all in the fucking soup. No, I'm done. Pump the brakes. So what I was saying before, fucking sci-fi. Oh yeah, original Time Machine, H.G. Wells' book. when he goes to the future with and meets the Morlocks and the Eloi, when he first meets the Eloi, and this is all him observing and sort of coming up with his own ideas just based off of what he's seeing. He has no grounding in anything hardcore that he's like, okay, and this is how the history of the world happens. Like, he's just sort of deducing, well, because I'm seeing this maybe this is what happened. He's seeing the future of this before he meets the Morlocks, of the Eloi being these very small, delicate creatures. Their attention spans are very short. Even though they're thrilled to see him at first, they kind of forget he's there after a while. Even this sort of gratitude isn't something that's really all that big for them. When Weena, the one female Eloi that he saves, is drowning in a river, none of the other Eloi go to save her because she doesn't really matter to them, because that's what their whole mental state is like. Also, in this far future, the Eloi are almost kind of genderless. They kind of look like each other, and they're very promiscuous with each other. So it's like sexuality and gender norms have sort of really gone frayed and blended around the edges. And it's interesting to see that in a book written around the turn of the fucking century, and looking at that now and what life is currently like now in society, in the future, where that stuff has been happening and is happening more and more. So something as simple as something like Time Machine, just reading that is kind of like, all right, that's interesting. Because of the time I'm in, it's interesting to see something similar going on. In a way,
it is really fascinating how some of the early founders of science fiction were able to make insanely accurate predictions, not only with scientific technology, but also with social cultures.
Mm-hmm. Which is why it'll be interesting to see ultimately what happens with Planet of the Apes, because the original film, it played up on... All right, well, instead of me fucking talking all the goddamn time, because I've been doing a lot of that, and I'm a gabby bastard.
I don't have you on very often. I mean, it's
so I'll make it up for lost time then.
Exactly.
So, let me pose this question then to you guys. The original film, we're not talking about the sequel, we're just talking about the original film. What would you say, for the time it was made, are any big major themes or ideas that are trying to be brought across, either consciously or unconsciously, by the people who are making it? Either they did it knowingly, that, yeah, we want to comment on the times that we're in, or it's just like, no, it's in the ether. How could you not have this as something?
So one of the things I brought up with Casey at one time is I really think that the series is playing off a rather racist fear that some people had, that Black people were going to essentially gain power over the whites and then enslave them.
Right. That's the first. That's a couple films down the line, though. Let's just talk about the first film.
No, that's pretty prominent in the first film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's carried out throughout a bunch of them, but yeah, it's definitely in the first film.
Yeah, and I'm speaking of the first film in that case. Are we talking about Rise, or are we talking about Planet of the Apes?
Planet of the Apes.
We're talking about. We'll talk about Rise in just a minute. We're doing kind of a compare contrast. So
okay, yeah. So yeah, that's my take on Planet of the Apes.
Okay, so the first film, and you're touching upon the films as a series. It's a lot of racial undertones to things.
To racial overtones, where it's Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where some of the stuff that was subverted in Planet of the Apes, even though it was pretty blatantly obvious when it got to Conquest, it was like, okay, so we're talking about servants and literal slavery. The imagery is just all throughout. There's literally no way you can watch that movie and not see it. The movie does a very clever thing to have the only good human in the movie be a Black guy who says, "Oh, this is like our people," and all that kind of stuff, and just really heavy-handed.
Someone descended from slaves, can you not show mercy?
Yeah.
It's also interesting to see the parallel in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where it's like, oh, you have the stereotypical greedy capitalist. Oh, but it's a black guy. It's not the standard evil old white guy who's only out for money. It's sort of a young, up-and-coming black fellow. And it's like, okay, that's different. Because what you would normally see is some old, crusty white guy or some slick, young white dude looking to make a quick buck off of this. And it's like, okay, but he's black. That's different.
Yeah, I also think it's very telling to the original Planet of the Apes movie because does the black guy even get to talk in the movie? Because I know he's like the first person that gets killed.
I think he has. They have lines, but then again, the other two astronauts that aren't Charlton Heston really don't have much lines. It's really Charlton Heston doing a hell of a lot of talking, and then the black guy gets shot and stuff.
Yeah.
But then his other friend gets lobotomized, and I think his friend is also a ginger. So it's like, well, okay. But
and
also,
then the woman just dies.
She dies because
transit.
Yeah, because the fresh seal on her Ziploc container cracked. But then Charlton Heston has that weird, creepy line where he says, with our eager help, she would have been the new Eve for a whole new Garden of Eden. It's like, how much do you want to bet she thought she was the geologist on this? And she really didn't have any idea of what Project New Eden was going to be about. I think to expand on the points you're making, military might and the military as a major force is also a part of, especially the second movie. The idea that you pinhead eggheads don't know what's best. We got to get some muscle behind things in order to, make sense of the world. Because there is that chimpanzee protest, and then was General Ursus or Urko, the gorilla general. He stomps them down when he's on horseback, and it's like. And he has the famous line, the only good human is a dead human.
Yeah.
It's okay, well, we're kind of turning into a police state now. So that's interesting to see. And then we really turn into a police state when we go back to Earth and apes are second-class citizens. So those are some big things from the old series. With these two new films, what are some big themes and points that the new films have been making that could continue on or go into a branched off direction?
I think that the newer films have really gotten into some of the scientific breakthroughs that were made after the NIM project back in the 70s. So a lot of this information wasn't privy to the people writing the original series. We essentially know more about apes now than we did at that time, which is one of the reasons why I'm kind of okay with them possibly remaking the original film. That being said, I really think that the new series is getting into this whole question of nurture, especially with like Caesar and Koba. And Dawn, but also in the original film where you can kind of see how if Caesar wasn't raised by people that cared about him,
Montalban, things would have been a hell of a lot different.
Right.
Well, one of the other themes that I think is really important too in Dawn is this there's a lot of, it looks to me kind of like it's a lot of critique of our imbalance of government, because when you look at Caesar and Koba, they're both attaching themselves to one of their three major laws, but the three major laws are there to balance each other out. You are, morally, ethically correct, so to speak. You're a good ape if you can do all three. You can't just pick one and be like, I do that one, and that's good enough.
And for the folks at home, what are the three major ape laws again?
Well, Caesar represents
because I also forget too. So
ape, right, and then Koba represents apes strong together, but obviously he runs around killing apes. That doesn't work. But then Caesar is not putting enough faith in the apes as a whole working together. He's just like, I'm in charge, and that's that, and that's how shit gets out of control. And then it's the two of them taking these two ideas in too far of extremes instead of balancing each other out.
Now, what's the third law? Is there a third law?
There is a third law, and I was trying to look at it in the movie because I couldn't remember. It's knowledge is something, and I don't know. I'll look it up.
Yeah,
pretty
I tried
much.
to Google it and I couldn't find it. They just have the first two laws.
But I think this third one is going to be a big deal in the new movie, but
Right.
it depends on what it is.
I agree with what you guys are saying. I think the original series of films up to a point definitely got to some big issues of, okay, well, what time period are we making these films in? It's the 60s going into the 70s. What do we have going on around this time? We have the Civil Rights Movement. We have the Vietnam War. So and distrust in political figures with the orangutans and what they're doing. They're doing something for the greater good of the people, but is it really helping them? Yes or no? So you're having that scene in these films, whether unconsciously or consciously, of there's racial divides, there's class divides in the original films. The orangutans.
Knowledge is power. Sorry.
Yeah. The orangutans.
Okay, that's what I thought it was, but
in the original films, the orangutans are almost like the high society, political leaders. The chimpanzees are kind of the middle class, and the gorillas are kind of the grunt labor lower class in a way. We really don't have that in these new movies at all. We definitely see all three groups, and they're starting to feel certain areas out.
Yeah, but when you look, well, it's about the third movie, but in one of the posters, it looks like there's the visual lines drawn between the species down.
I have no doubt. So, and they're touching upon the military with having that gorilla general, the only good human is a dead human. They're definitely talking about social classes with, was it Battle of the Planet of the Apes or Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where everyone's in colored jumpsuits?
I think that's Conquest.
You have Conquest with not just social strata, but also kind of racial strata as well. It's like, this is the underclass. They're apes. Stage whisper, they also represent people of color. It's an allegory. Get it?
Nudge, nudge.
And then by the fifth film, it's pretty much, it's just an action movie. It's a bunch of mutants in a school bus fighting a bunch of others, and it's more infighting amongst the apes in that movie than it is of anything. It's interesting in the third film where the apes go back in time to current day, where there's even sort of more subtle racial stuff, where the apes are sort of they're in their own clothes. They're being kept in cages because they think they're animals. And then why is she going for the treat? And then Azira goes, because I simply loathe bananas, and she gives herself away. Oh my God, you're talking. And then they realize, oh, you're actually smart. Dr. Milo gets killed, and then they kind of get accepted into human society, and it's like a trend. And isn't this sort of popular? And then they wind up exhibiting things, which is like at the boxing match, where it's just like, isn't this great, Cornelius? It's like, no, it's barbaric. What the fuck are you talking about? It's like, oh, I guess they really don't fit in like us. I guess they're not quite like us. And there goes some weird undertones with that, especially when Zira gets pregnant. And it's all reflections of the time. With this new bunch of movies, I'll agree with you, Ren. There's definitely treating apes in a different way scientifically with what we know about them more so than ever before, that there's not really much separating us from them. I think there's definitely a bit of dabbling in science in such a way of, wasn't the chemical they were monkeying with, yeah, pun intended, good God, a joke was so lame I had polio. Anyway, the chemical that they were, the medication that they were experimenting on was supposed to cure Alzheimer's, correct?
Yeah.
So it's interesting they're coming at it from that end of this chemical that was supposed to do one thing has done a completely different thing. And not in the way you thought, because don't they also prove that, yeah, it kind of works great in humans for a while, and then it kind of goes downhill. It doesn't really work well with humans anymore. Because
you essentially get this disease where you cough up blood and die.
Gotcha. So it's like it kind of works, but then it stops working. But with apes that aren't human beings, chimpanzees, yada, 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 it works fantastic, and it does wonders for them, makes them super smart.
It must be the 2 chromosomes difference that helps them.
So there's that. There's this sort of experimenting with science and like, what are we really doing with our technology? Are we really improving ourselves, or are we hurting ourselves? And that's definitely going on today. I think even though this is something that's kind of played out an awful lot, it's definitely something that's there. You could see another other shit right now, like The Walking Dead, where it's like, oh, we're no different from them, and they're no different from us, and it's sort of a mirror held up to humanity to show that there's not much of a divide here between the two. That despite how many differences we might perceive, in reality, there's a lot more similarities than we would beg to venture, which kind of shows a greater thing of maybe even sort of the societal and racial strife going on right now. It's like, we're not all that different, you and I. And if we could get past this, we could live together and things would be better. But some of you keep not wanting that.
Yeah, I guess probably one of the big questions is, do we want Planet of the Apes to get back to its roots and talk about some more pressing social stuff, or do we want it to talk about the relationship between humans and animals more strictly, and the other stuff maybe like slightly allegorical? It's kind of hard, especially because this whole like Black Lives Matter movement is something that's just, you know, kind of blown up over the past couple years. I mean, it's been something festering for decades, but, you know, it definitely seems to have a new sort of life and identity now.
I agree with you. That would definitely be something interesting to see, because as it's funny because I was talking to a friend about that not just a couple of days ago, and I have issues with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's a group that the majority of the people involved, I think, mean well, but unfortunately, a lot of stuff wind up happening that it kind of is like, oh, you guys need to get together on the same page here, because you're sending a lot of mixed messages when there's not one person calling the shots or at least organizing everybody, and things tend to get really fucking messy, and people really don't want to be on your side when shit happens like that. And as this friend put it, they put it as, well, think of it this way. What do you expect from a group that is marginalized or feels they've been marginalized for decades, and then gets a chance to sort of grab a microphone and have their voices heard? They may not be all that interested in doing it, in letting what they need to be heard in the most least messiest of ways. So it's just like, I hear you, but this is what's coming with what I hear you. It's like, I don't fucking care, because no one's been listening to me this whole time. It's like, I get that, but this is the fallout from it. And is this helping, or is this hurting ultimately what you want and are striving for?
Well, and it's this interesting question of whether or not societies want to be isolationist or whether we should live in unity. And
Right.
It seems that many people, if they had it their way, especially with college campus and all this kind of stuff as well, many people think that the best way for things to work out is to essentially self-segregate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people joke and coin it the regressive left, because they're essentially trying to take us back to a time where these sort of things were demanded because of laws and everything like that.
Here's an interesting thought I just had. If you were to do a trilogy of films, this is like a possible next trilogy of this new Ape series. You're basically following a Caesar type character, but it's from the human perspective in a total ape society. Maybe don't even bring the fact that there's a Charlton Heston astronaut character. Maybe just bring the fact that there's one human being who, for whatever reason, this is what they're like, and the other humans aren't that bright, or what it might be. And it's like, can you get any mileage out of that, where you have sort of this underclass that was an upper class and now tries to be upper class again?
Actually, because I don't know where this new film is going, what I just thought is like the society is breaking down, and by the final movie, people start losing their voice because that's something that happens in the original film, and
That
that
they lose
could
their
be.
voice, or they just can't they just don't have language to communicate.
It was a little unclear to me because it seemed like they couldn't even grunt either.
Because Nova does wind up saying Taylor at the end of the second film. I think it was sort of a weird director choice to be like, no, you're basically just, dumb animals. You don't talk at all except for grunting. And I think that got translated into, oh, we don't say anything at all. It's like, that's not quite what. All right, fine, whatever. Let's just do the fucking movie. The apes are the only ones who are talking. That's the important thing.
Well, I mean, especially when like the allegory is about social oppression. What's one of the most, primary examples of oppression is you're not allowed to read, you're not allowed to be educated.
Right. And you're not even allowed to have your own language because that transmits the idea of thought.
It could also be interesting because you could have the Forbidden Zone and some of the mythology that they're creating sort of be established in these films, essentially see how the society reforms to make apes in power and humans essentially where they were at the beginning.
Right. Yeah, because that's a whole nother thing about the fucking Forbidden Zone. Don't they make it a point, or at least suggest in the first two films, that it's basically the result of a nuclear wasteland?
Yeah.
Thus, that's where the mutants come from, because they live out there.
All right, guys. I hate to say this, but it is 2 a.m. now.
Yeah, I think we've gone as far as we could go. But yeah.
That's what you think.
So yeah, in closing, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and we really didn't even go through like a whole synopsis of what it was about, but I think folks have got the gist of it, and if they haven't seen it yet, we'll go fucking see it. It's a good middle film. You didn't need to see the first film in order to understand where everything went. It'll be very interesting to see with the next film if you didn't need to see the second film in order to understand where everything is by the time the third film comes along.
Mm-hmm.
And it works on its own merits. You could pluck it from the trilogy as of right now and watch it on its own and still be entertained. And yeah, let's go do human work. Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.